I was walking to the car this morning. Coldest day of 2025 easily. Probably the coldest day we've had in a year. And I'm imagining droves of IUBB fans doing the same last night at about, 7:46 p.m. Eastern time. And hitting the cold and realizing this is better than what we just witnessed. This was worth it.
Oh, man. Did you see all the students leaving last night early at halftime? Greg Doyle got the tweet.
Escalator was moving pretty fast there.
Yes, it was.
A whole lot
Yes,
in
sir.
Bloomington hitting the exits and what is, which is saying something because there's been quite a few of them in the Mike Woodson era. The most pathetic performance you will see from an Indiana basketball team last night in Assembly Hall. We'll hit that. We'll hit the Pacers and potentially, I don't know, maybe a suspension for Benedict Mathurin. If you give the old bump to the official, does that mean you get at least one game?
I think that possibly could happen, yeah. He did the double clap in her face as well.
Yeah.
Not good.
He's an emotional player, I think, at times, but, boy, that was another level for Mathurin last night. So hit on that. It's plenty to get to on this Wednesday morning. It is colder than cold. I'm Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, Mark Dykton on the ones and twos. I think 2 degrees was what I saw on the old dashboard today.
Okay, so mine got down to 4 degrees.
You got down to 4?
Yeah, and I was just remembering the conversation we had literally 24 hours ago. All the people that poo-poo away 80, 85, 90 degrees. I hope you go outside today and you just spend some time outside. You go take the family on a picnic. You take the dog on a walk. Whatever you need to do, do it today. It's 4 degrees outside.
I think Mark gave us the I like the changing of seasons.
I do.
Yeah.
Mark, I like the changing of seasons. I don't like single digits.
Well, I got in the car to this morning at my house. It was 0 degrees. By the time I pulled in, it was 7. It's a balmy 7 degrees outside.
There you go. Man, I tell you.
Took my jacket off.
Last night, you know what kept me warm? IU message boards. That's what kept me warm last night.
Boy, did you do a scroll?
I did a little bit of a scroll. Twitter was good. Oh, look at that.
Those were loud. Those were audible. And I thought those were deserved.
I mean, how pathetic was that last night? I text you guys, like, it was 50-22. I'm like, you don't see this. We have all watched bad basketball, but you don't see a team at home playing for everything in the middle of Big Ten conference play, be down by, have a 30-piece laid on them in the first half and walking around like a bunch of lazy basketball players. I mean, you see losses, you see bad performances, but it is rare right out of the gate you see a team do that, right?
Yes, but hasn't this kind of been, not to this level.
But this is the masterpiece.
This is Mike Woodson.
Yeah, but this is his masterpiece.
Sure,
This is
that's
Woodson
probably a
on
good way to
steroids.
describe it, but he's got a lot of award-winning art that is very similar
You're
to
right.
what we saw one of them Saturday.
Who was the
in Iowa
composer we
City.
talked about yesterday or last week who did Rudy? The guy that did
Jerry Goldsmith.
He's Jerry Goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, we looked at Jerry Goldsmith's Wikipedia, and he had like 30 other things that were like
banger after banger,
like huge movies, huge TV shows. That's basically what Mike Woodson was.
I'll share it at some point today. I don't think it's necessary here at 7:03, but I am now extremely optimistic about Notre Dame's effort Monday night.
Okay.
Spoke with someone yesterday.
Oh, I like that.
She reassured me. She instilled a lot of faith in me.
Okay.
And I was not expecting this.
I like what I'm hearing. Okay.
I'll share that here
Okay.
at some point. And I also thought, walking to my car this morning, I thought, can you imagine if this is next Wednesday and this is Speedo weather?
That's a great point. We should look at that. What's this supposed to be next Wednesday? The meteorologists have been they've been pretty good. Yeah, it's not good, man. High of 20. If we're talking about doing this at 8 a.m., you're talking 9 degrees. You're talking 9 degrees, buddy.
I really can't afford much more shrinkage than is already there.
We haven't talked about it. You're not using any performance-enhancing stuff, if that's the case, are you? There's no socks going anywhere.
Unless we grow hair, Indy's got something else for me. Yeah, I don't think I don't think anything else is going to really help me out in that area. Stephen Holder 8, Bob Kravitz at 9. Obviously, we'll talk with Bob about what happened in Bloomington last night. For anyone that cares, it is the 10-year anniversary of Deflategate coming up this weekend, so I figured Bob was the man who broke that story and is probably the most hated man in the New England area. So we'll throw a couple of those Bob's way and what he exactly remembers. I was at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough that night, and it is very hindsight 2020 for me, but looking back on it, it was quite the night there in that AFC Championship game. But Yeah, Andy, last night it was just another display from Mike Woodson of pure arrogance and pure laziness. I mean, those are the two words that define his tenure, frankly, him, I think, as a basketball coach, arrogant and lazy. And I thought last night was, to your point, the Jerry Goldsmith masterpiece of it all.
Those are the exact words you use. You know, Mike Woodson has had arrogance that I'm going to have this job until I don't want to have this job. And I guess there's probably, and we'll see ultimately how much power Scott Dolson has at the end of the year. And, you know, I related this yesterday. And
Does it get to the end of the year, though?
I think he does. I think he does. I think you let him, you know, fully fall on his face. I don't know. You know, some programs don't like if you fire a coach mid-season. Of course, now the coaches like Jim Larinaga or Tony Bennett 5 minutes before the season will just go ahead and quit themselves. But this team is not nearly as talented as Mike Woodson thought, and he is not maximizing anything. And we talk about that, you know, at times where coaches are maximizing the talent that they have. You know, I thought the Pacers last year, for the most part, KB did that, but this is a joke. I mean, this is a joke. You have players, and this is part of the NIL money. People know that Ballo's making a couple $1 million. And for him, and listen, I hate only picking on him because at times he's the only one that can make a shot or grab a rebound. But when he's loafing up and down the floor and people know, hey, this guy's making a couple $1 million to be here, this Indiana basketball team is why I would never give to an NIL program. I mean, look at him. Look at these jokers out there loafing up and down the floor. They can't make a shot. They can't play defense. They don't have the talent they think they have, and their coach is entitled. I would throw that word in there. There is arrogance as well. And now they're like the Colts, that the Colts let the Chris Ballard relationship become toxic. And it's their fault that the Colts fan is so angry at what is going on in the leadership of their program. IU basketball is going down that same road. They're going down the road that one of their own now is going to be seen in a toxic way. And I don't know what they do. I don't know if they have the guts and fortitude to pull the plug at the end of the season on Mike Woodson, or if it's going to be another example like the Colts, KB, and that is the leadership is ineffective, but we have no idea when the leadership is going to change, and that's a scary thing for fans, and good for the fans that booed him off the floor, good for the fans if you wanted to, if you're a student, you left at halftime, that's what they deserved. Indiana didn't show up last night, and they deserved the disgrace that they got.
There should have been two very important eyes watching that game last night, who usually is not watching those games. And I'll get to that here in a little bit. You know, I thought in general last night, Robbie Hummel said this on several occasions, especially kind of late in the game. Like, Hummel kept on saying, I'm really looking forward to see how they respond on Friday in Columbus. And I'm thinking to myself, Robbie, how about the response from Iowa City Saturday night?
Right. Yeah. How about tonight?
That was an eye-opening?
Yeah, exactly.
Coming back home and playing a ranked team, playing a team that certainly would have helped out your resume. Like, where is that response? Where is that, whatever, pissed off attitude that should be there? Multiple losses of 25, and I forgot, I don't know, Galloway threw in a 3 late last night. What was it, 25 again last night?
Yeah, it was 94-69.
Multiple 25-point losses shouldn't be needed. I would like to think that one would be enough to have some sort of wake-up call. And this was not like hey, you're down 4 at half and it gets away from me in the second half. No. I mean, you just got your ass kicked right from the beginning last night. And then again, I keep on coming back to the arrogance and the laziness. And, it's arrogance in roster construction. It's arrogance in coaching staff. It's arrogance in accepting blame in every single post-game press conference that you watch. It's arrogance last night in telling Don Fisher, I don't have 2 minutes for you.
It's ridiculous.
In post-game radio.
Yeah.
And it's laziness, probably a root of the laziness that I guess I can speak to one thing last night and one thing a little bit bigger picture. We talked to a variety of people about the recruitments of Jalen Harrelson, about the recruitment of Braylon Mullins, and whether those parties didn't say it directly, enough people around them said it indirectly that Mike Woodson was a lazy recruiter.
Yeah, he got outworked by Micah Shrewsbury. Yeah, we talked about that.
And
yeah,
Dan Hurley,
Dan
who,
Hurley,
you know,
across the
to
country.
people here, Storrs, Connecticut, ain't Greenfield, Indiana.
Right. Yeah, he got outworked twice in his own state, in his backyard.
And then last night I thought I was seeing things. As I dialed up the second half, I thought, wait a minute. They just gave up 60, right, in the first half? Is that the most points ever given up in Assembly Hall?
Boy, I'd have to look it up, but it
got to be damn
It was
close.
as bad of a loss as they've had in, Assembly Hall in a while. It's in the pantheon, if you will.
And the laziness is, let's run out the same starting five for the second half.
That's a great point.
What are we doing here?
Bit. Yeah, mix it up.
Rough half. That's the five that deserves to be out there here to start the second half. I mean, like, what?
Throw Anthony Leal on the floor, who played 22 minutes last night.
How about the kid for Bellarmine, for all I care? I don't know. Bryson Tucker will hit 30 mid-range jumpers, and you'll get back into the game.
Bryson Tucker had no idea where he was on defense. It's mid-January.
Just those are the two words. It's arrogance and it's laziness. So, absolutely pathetic down in Bloomington last night. Gainbridge Fieldhouse, I thought kind of what to expect. You hate to kind of throw a cop-out in there, but, without Halliburton, best team in the East. If you would have told me, hey, what do you think the script will be tonight? I'm like, Pacers will probably hang in there for, a couple quarters, and Cleveland will pull away in the fourth. And Mitchell and Garland were very, very good. The Mathurin situation, again, I don't want to overreact to it because I think it was pretty out of character for Mathurin. He certainly should not have reacted in the manner that he did. I don't think he meant to bumper, but he definitely did.
Yeah. He easily could get a game. I would not be surprised.
In NBA language, or really professional sports language in general, you bump an official, whether you meant it or not, whether it was a little bump or a big bump, that could lead to a game. And right now, with Halliburton, his injury situation, they play tomorrow night in Detroit. That'll be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, he was pissed off by the first tech. Still, I think. That chin up that he had, she's the one that whistled him for the first tech, so I think that probably is where some of it boiled over. But all in all, last night, I thought you saw the best team in the East, looked like the best team in the East, and the Pacers without their star.
Yeah, I thought Stan Van Gundy had it right on the call on TNT that it's probably the right call, but it's just so soft from the NBA.
You're talking about the first one, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the first technical, yeah.
I thought the second one he more than deserved.
Oh, no, there's no doubt about it. At the end of the game, he wanted to get tossed and everything else, and that's fine. If he gets a game, listen, I don't know if it could be as quick as the Detroit game, but if you play without Mathurin and Halliburton, it's the kind of game you got to beat these bad teams to keep climbing in the Eastern Conference. Defensively, obviously, the Cavs had it going, but I think that's probably, listening to Carlisle after the game, what frustrated him the most. He talks about being connected. He talks about toughness and those sorts of things. But when you allow 37 and 38, respectively, in the first and third quarters, it's going to be difficult to win a game, especially without Tyrese Halliburton there to score the basketball. And then in the second half, and I know he was asked about it, was Carlisle, Pascal Siakam only got, 5 shots, I think, in the second half. So, I know we just beat up Indiana, so some fans may say, well, go ahead and beat up the Pacers. I'm not doing that. They split with the Cavs in this little 2-game series, which is exactly what they had to do. And I guess I give them credit. They did stick around in this game. And if they would have made just a couple more shots, they really would have put some game pressure. But now, to me, it's all about Tyrese Halliburton and how many games he's going to miss, trying to read between the lines with Carlisle last night. It sounds like he may miss a couple games. I don't think anyone here in the studio would be surprised about that. But they got to go. They got to beat Detroit. And they're probably going to have to beat Detroit without Halliburton and possibly without Benedict Mathurin.
There's no one in their earthly mind that could compare the Pacers' loss last night to Indiana, right?
Well, I mean, people want
Pacers just want to set a franchise record winning 6 straight by double digits.
People want us to beat up on the teams when they lose. I don't know what Pacer fans wanted from last night.
I think it's important
because I don't feel that way. I'm not going to beat up on them for last night's loss.
To me, there are teams that earn benefit of the doubt. You have accomplished things to where a blip on the radar or a game or two is not DEFCON. If I asked you what Mike Woodson's greatest accomplishment as Indiana basketball head coach is, you would say what?
It's beating Purdue twice in that season, 3 years ago with Trace Jackson Davis. That's it. I think he made TJD better and he beat Purdue twice. That's it. And that's it. There's no second. Well, I can't think of what number 2 would even be.
Right, because it's, okay, you beat Kent State, whatever, you beat Wyoming in the play-in game, and then what happens? You just get run off the floor. And that happens just so often. There's no more consistent thing in the Mike Woodson era than this team getting blitzed by quality opponents. particularly away from home. Last night happened to be, the vaunted, hey, have you heard about the road in the Big Ten? Oh, my gosh. Road in the Big Ten.
Tough to win on the road.
Oh,
yeah.
tough.
I'd say the high point
Doesn't
was
even begin to describe it. Last night, how was road in the Big Ten for Brad Underwood and company?
the high point was him getting tricked into calling Matt Painter on a cameo.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
That was the high point. Because it was endearing. You're like, oh, he got tricked. We've all been there.
Oh, goodness. I forgot the Cameo
Called
thing.
him Matty, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys, KB,
They didn't kill us.
Did you start a Cameo
I
during COVID?
did not. No.
I know a bunch of sports radio gas
Really?
bags that act like someone wanted to spend $25, $35 to send their buddy a
jeez.
joke message.
Can you
Oh, yeah.
imagine?
I know them all over the country. That
Here
did
I
it.
am in my Speedo wishing happy birthday to people.
Can you imagine the ego? So, obviously a busy day today. Stephen Holder, like KB mentioned, going to join us coming up at 8 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, Bob Kravitz will join us. Before he comes on, I do want to talk a little Deflategate because I was reading back on it, and I would love you were there in the middle of it. I would love your thoughts and observations on such a thing. All right, so we got a ton of sound. Mike Woodson last night. What did he say about Butler? And then, obviously, the Pacers loss as well. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's Wednesday, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Coming up in a bit, there is a defensive coordinator name for the Colts I have intrigued by. I believe Andy Sweeney's got a little skepticism by. We'll hit on
Just a
that
little
here
bit.
coming up in a little, but I assume we head to the disaster in the 812, Andy Sweeney, to lead off this morning check.
What did they tell you in journalism school at IU? If it bleeds, it leads. Did you ever hear that before, KB, in any of your journalism classes? So we'll start there. Last night in Bloomington, 94-69. That is your final. Illinois walks in and absolutely pounds IU. 60-32 was actually what the halftime score was when everyone was chanting to fire Mike Woodson. Let me give you a couple Mike Woodson clips here. First up, message to the fans. Obviously, IU going through a tough spot right now.
You know, I love our fans and I respect our fans, but it's up to me to get our players to play at a high level, and that's my job, and I'm going to continue to work in that area and hope that our fans will stay in there and hang in there with us.
Yeah, well, right now they're not. One other one, Mike Woodson, at the end of the game, you had the pushy match. In comes Ballo, kind of with a forearm. So a couple guys, technicals. He was tossed. Miles Rice, I believe, got a technical as well. Woodson was asked, hey, what are you going to do with Ballo?
Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot I can do, until I go back and review it, and I'm sure the commissioner and everybody will take a look at what happened and make a decision on what they plan on doing. I just hope Ballo's with us our next game as we travel over to Ohio.
Now, I don't think Ballo should be suspended or anything, but what a great answer there from Mike Woodson. I can't do anything. I'm just the head coach. I can't do anything. I hope he's there. I hope he's there playing with us coming up our next game. So there you go. Coming up next, it will be Ohio State on Friday.
I'm pretty bothered by him showing up Don Fisher post-game, too.
Yeah, you should be.
It's
so Bush League.
Just continued arrogance from him. No time for Don Fisher post-game for Mike Woodson last night. All right, over Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 127-117. The Pacers lose to the best team in the East last night. So that ends their 6-game win streak, all of those by double digits. No Tyrese Halliburton in this one. Rick Carlisle did clarify pregame this is a left groin, not hamstring injury for Halliburton. Again, the left hamstring has been the big issue for him here over the past year or so. So that was the update last night. Again, no Halliburton. For the most part, defensively, they obviously had struggles. Mitchell and Garland combined for 59 points. Benedict Mathurin does get tossed late, and if you watch it, I thought it was a very deserved tossing by Benedict Mathurin. And he definitely bumps the woman official. I don't think it was a significant bump, but you know how it works. You do that to an official in any professional sports league, it's not going to be looked at very fondly. So it would not stun me at all if we got news today that Benedict Mathurin will not be playing in Detroit coming up tomorrow night. So that's tomorrow for the Pacers. Philly on Saturday, off to Paris after that.
Yeah, last thing for me, Purdue back in action tonight. They're on the road, West Coast trip out in Washington. Purdue favored by 7.5. For me, KB, I haven't seen too much of Washington. 10-7 on the season, just 1-5 in the Big Ten. That one tonight again, 9:30. It's a late one on the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, they're coached by Danny Sprinkle, who Purdue beat last year in round 2. Utah State, Grant Osobor, you remember that name?
Oh yeah, yes
I
do.
He is straight transferred over with Danny Sprinkle, and so that will be the competition for Purdue tonight. I don't think Washington's done anything of note, hence a 7.5-point favorite on the road. Butler at home, they are a 6.5-point favorite over Seton Hall. It goes without saying how desperately Butler needs this. They've lost 1 million in a row. Did you see the other day they got a top 100 commit for next year's class?
Yeah, right now they have a top 15 class in the country. Does Butler basketball? How about that?
How many teams are in the midst of a 9-game losing streak?
I have no idea.
And have this is not what Butler usually does.
No, this is
their best class in program history.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a top 15 class. I mean, if you can keep everyone together, can someone play now?
Yeah, seriously.
Can they get on campus a little bit early?
7 o'clock tonight, but this shows you how bad Seton Hall is. Butler is favored by 6.5. Seton Hall has absolutely owned this series as of late. They've won 9 of 10, but not good. They've got St. Peter's dude, right?
It's not that
Sheehan Holloway,
I believe so. It's not that I didn't believe you, but I did look that up. I'm like, wait a minute, Butler's favored by 6.5? I kind of did a double take there, so I'm sure we'll talk about that tomorrow. Coming up on the other side, as KB mentioned, a new name in the Colts defensive coordinator search. We'll let you know who that is, plus more on the bloodbath there in Bloomington last night. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's a Wednesday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It was originally planned, but probably a decent time to have Tom Crean join us. That'll be tomorrow, coming up 9 o'clock hour, as we kind of shift gears a little bit more college basketball centric and enjoyed our combos with Coach Crean last year. We'll have him on coming up again. That is tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And a few I do want to get to. I would hope and think, and for IU fans' sake, I would say pray that there were some important eyes watching Mike Woodson coach last night. Eyes that usually don't watch Mike Woodson coach directly. So we'll hit on that here in a few. Andy Sweeney reports today that former Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale will interview for the Colts Open at defensive coordinator. I am a fan of this for two reasons.
Okay.
First off, Martindale, from a systematic standpoint, very, very different than how Gus Bradley runs things. I also think when I look at Wink Martindale, I get Bruce Arians vibes. Talking with people in the Giants organization that were close with him, there is that kind of edginess, I think, to him as a coach that should be welcomed into that building. So, again, the defensive style, yes. The coaching style, I also think could benefit, I would say, an organization that is just stale.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there a person, like when you think of yourself, KB, when you analyze yourself, is there someone who you feel is like the most opposite you in the world? Like, I don't know, like the things, I don't know if you're a big gambler. I don't know if you stay out late, so maybe someone who gambles or stays out late or something like that. You would say that person is the most opposite of me.
You're talking to the guy who bet on Purdue money lines multiple times this football season.
That's a great point.
Never bet on Purdue money line. Always to cover.
Yeah, it was your lock of the week like 3 different
always
times.
to cover.
The reason I bring
and
it
if Ryan Walters had an ounce of competence,
well,
their 6 drives against Oregon equate to 0 points, all in Oregon side of the field.
Kick a couple field goals, Ryan, okay?
I get what you're saying.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah,
there
sure.
is no, I cannot think.
Yeah, Tiger Woods morally probably is about the exact opposite of me.
There you go. By the way, did you watch him tee off in the event last night?
Sadly, I feel like I was juggling Pacers and IU, so it's
so you haven't seen it yet?
It's on the agenda to get back to at some point today.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to do that.
I figured, for my show and for this job, it was probably good I didn't watch Tiger Woods over the other two.
Lead with Tiger Woods at 7:35. There is no one that I could think that the Colts could hire that would be more opposite of Gus Bradley. Seemingly his personality, and I don't know Gus. I know you guys have obviously for years interviewed him more than I have, personality-wise and defensive scheme-wise than Wink Martindale. I tweeted this out yesterday, and I don't have, and I looked for it. I haven't found the official numbers from Michigan, but the Colts last year blitzed 17% of the time, and that number is actually even less in 2023 and 2022. It was down to like 15-16%. Okay, it's something we've talked about. 2 years ago, when Wink was with the Giants, they blitzed 45% of the time. And then the year before in Baltimore, he was over 50%. And his numbers in Baltimore are consistently over 40%, 44%, 43% in blitz rate. And I'm just using that as an example. I like Wink a good deal. Now, what happened at the end of the Giants' tenure, you had obviously a season 2 years ago, so the Giants made the playoffs. Wink Martindale, he's a defensive coordinator, and I liked him a good deal. The Giants were in the same spot; they were a passive defense, and they became a very aggressive defense. He and Brian Dable did not get along at the end. There were several fights. The reports were out there that Dable thought that Wink was trying to take his job, was undermining him, was not running stuff that they wanted to run, changing up the game plan, not listening to the head coach, that sort of thing. They had several yelling matches. I can't remember if he actually left before the end of the season, but you knew he was gone. And what I found interesting about it was he didn't immediately get another job in the NFL. And I don't know the reasons why. He's obviously well-respected with the Ravens, and he did good things with the Giants. So I don't know what happened. He took that year off. He went to Michigan. He was the highest paid. It was either DC or assistant coach in college football. I think he made north of $2 million per year. He made that Balo money. That's what he made last year at Michigan. I have no idea if he rubbed anyone wrong. Not surprising. He would want to get back, obviously, into the NFL. So I really like Wink. It would be totally different than what we have seen the last couple years with Gus Bradley. The only thing I wonder about is his personality. Is it needed? Is that personality needed with the Colts? Or would his personality, which is a big personality, would that clash at all with any of the powers that be, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard? I don't know the answer to that. That would be the only thing that worries me. But, boy, I tell you, the defense week one would look totally different than what we've watched the last 3 years with this football team.
Well, I'd argue I'm not sure if Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard's personalities have earned the right to be the dominant whatever.
That's a fair assessment.
I understand what you're saying, but again, I think change should be welcome. And right now, Andy, does this look to be the significant change? Right? I mean, right now it's looking like Gus Bradley to whoever you decide upon is kind of the big move. We'll see personnel-wise what happens here coming up the rest of the offseason. But in terms of, important voices in that organization, I mean, your defensive coordinator hire, that's the fourth most important voice. Irsay, Ballard, Steichen, and then, especially here when Steichen, runs the offense as much as he does, this is your say. So I get that it would be a big 180, again, stylistically and personality-wise, and I think some of that would be very welcome. I remember talking to a Giants person back when Wink interviewed here for the head coaching job, because he got multiple interviews here back when they hired Shane Steichen, and he mentioned freaking man, juice dude, great teacher. I mean, could not have enough glowing things to say about him. And yes,
Freaking
you are
man.
right. It is a huge difference.
Oh, it's totally
from
different.
Gus Bradley. But again, I would argue welcomed. Certainly was with the Ravens for a long, long time there. Obviously watched John Harbaugh operate for a long, long time. So this is a name that is probably one that I have heavy, heavy intrigue in. Now, the general philosophy of wanting to be more aggressive defensively, opting for a bit of a 180 from Gus Bradley, that is the core of what I want to see. It's not, I don't view this as a Wink Martindale or bust sort of move, but I am highly intrigued by this. So we'll see how this plays out. Again, names like Lou Anarumo from Cincinnati, Steve Wilkes, I'm trying to think of the Bonda dude from Cleveland. I know doesn't have a very decorated resume at all, really, but I think he was a name. Dennis Allen, of course, a former Saints head coach. I am curious, with the Dallas situation, Andy, does Mike Zimmer's name pop up anywhere? Long time defensive coordinator.
Do you remember why we brought up Mike Zimmer a couple weeks ago? Do you remember that story that we brought up?
Probably because you were served as significant other on your For You tab.
She's about 35 years younger than him, so Mike Zimmer's living the good life. Kellen Moore, I think, is the leader in the clubhouse there.
Right.
More you mean DC Mike Zimmer? You
correct,
moved him up.
correct.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Now the Mike McCarthy staff is free-for-all, if you will. We'll obviously see if Mike McCarthy gets a head job and if he takes Mike Zimmer with him.
Is Wink at the top of your list? It sounds like he's pretty damn high on your list. With the names that we know.
There's a bit of intrigue from Steve Wilkes that I would have as well when I kind of look at that list. Obviously Dennis Allen's name. I'll kind of say what I said yesterday about Dennis Allen. I just assumed that, if and when Aaron Glenn gets a head coaching job this cycle, that Dennis Allen would just link up with Dan Campbell, who they used to be kind of roles reversed, but they were on the same staff in New Orleans. So that's probably where I'm at. But again, I want to stress this. The general approach is what I care about more than the name itself hey, let's attack a little bit more. Let's be aggressive. Let's don't live in contentment. That is how I think this defense needs to change. Yeah,
if it's 3rd and 7, you're not going to have defensive backs playing 12 yards off a wide receiver.
You don't say.
They are going to bring 6 and 7 guys. It would be a totally different defense. And hey, listen, sometimes you blitz, you get burned. That is out there.
But that, I think, is what, I would rather try and dictate
1,000%
to the opponent than sit there and say, no, we'll just wait for the opponent to screw up.
I think people here, he would do some press conferences and you would see some stuff and some reports would come out. I think people would fall in love with Wink Martindale.
This is a Bruce Arians type of hire.
When you say he's a freaking man, when you talk to someone, around the Giants, that's the best way I would put it. And here's what I don't know. He doesn't mind switching up jobs. And again, I'm saying this because I don't know if he has obviously he hasn't been blackballed in the NFL, but what happened that he didn't immediately get a job and had to go to college? And maybe he wanted to. Maybe a year away from the NFL, you go make a couple $1 million. Hell, you go make more money there at Michigan. Does that make him more gettable? Does that make sense? And does he fit the timeline? You know, around here, we've talked about this on and off air. You hire somebody, but who is going to take this job if they have opportunities to be a DC elsewhere? Don't you take maybe some of those jobs if you feel like the head coach is on the hot seat? Now, the flip side is the Colts aren't the only team that's dealing in this. I think the coaching staff there, for instance, with the Cincinnati Bengals, I think whoever they hire has to come in and feel like, hey, this might be a one-year thing. And Wink Martindale does not mind being a renegade. He doesn't mind being a mercenary is probably the better word. So, you know, is he more gettable for you, the Colts, because of his personality and because he doesn't mind jumping around jobs? I don't know the answer to these, but he's interesting. I tell you, he would be the opposite of Gus Bradley. And I think he's probably near the top of my list. I'd say right now Dennis Allen might be number one. I'd say Dennis Allen would be number one.
Again, we'll continue to update you on the Colts front here as things I don't even know what the hell I was trying to say. I sound like Indiana trying to play basketball last night. Stephen Holder will join us in 15, hopefully save us from my lack of intelligence here. Bob Kravitz coming up at 9. Andy, I mentioned to you earlier, I think hope / for Indiana fans' sake, because God bless that fan base. Did you hear the chants and the cheers when they would cut it to 20 in the second half?
Oh, I heard them.
I thought they had turned up the crowd mic on my Peacock.
Maybe they did.
It was incredible to hear. I mean, you have 98% of college basketball programs would cut off a limb to have that passion from their fan base. Both ways. You know, obviously, you have people fed up, and at least they care. And then obviously the ones that stayed in the building last night, they would cut it to 20 or 18, and you would think that they had just made the Sweet 16 for the first time in a decade.
And Robbie Hummel, he was trying, man. And Noah Eagle, who, by the way, my hair could never look like Noah Eagle's.
I think he's on with John today, Noah Eagle.
Oh, is he?
I believe so. But the eyes that I don't know if this person was in the building last night. I was texting with someone that was there that they said they didn't necessarily see that person. But the man that I think has had way too much say in the hiring of Mike Woodson, because let's be real about Mike Woodson. This is an under 500 NBA head coach that put on a jersey 40 years ago and was a very good player for you. That's the hire you made. Had nothing with college basketball. You know, Purdue hires a former player. Matt Painter also spent a large chunk of time in college basketball, elsewhere as well, at Southern Illinois before he came back to Purdue. That is wildly different than what modern college basketball looks like here with Mike Woodson. But the man that has had a whole lot of say in this and had no obligations last night due to the Indiana Pacers on TNT, was Quinn Buckner there? Was Quinn Buckner watching? The chair of the Board of Trustees, who I believe his time of chair of the Board of Trustees does come up here at the end of 2025. Like, what did he think watching that?
I know.
Because I would argue that I think Scott Dolson has maybe had some hands tied when it comes to this particular situation here. And again, I'll echo kind of what I said yesterday of people wanted Hollywood. And I get it. There's an affinity for the Bob Knight era that is understandable. And I think that's where, after Tom Crean and after Archie Miller and certainly Kelvin Sampson, that's why this is a hire that, to the old guard, I think was something that they wanted to do. They wanted to try and drum up that, even though the resume is you hired Jim O'Brien and Mo Cheeks outside of, what he did in the late 70s, early 80s for that basketball program, which is so long ago. I mean, so long ago when you think about it. So that is a question I had watching last night of, was Quinn Buckner watching? Does he care? Or does he choose to live in a Jim Irsay lifestyle of ignoring it, not being realistic, and continuing to create the standard that is now what IU basketball has become.
Yeah, IU basketball has no standard. I mean, we already know that. I mean, we're talking about can they just get into the NCAA tournament, and whenever you're doing that, you're operating, as a Power 4, Power 5 conference. You're operating with not believing in that you're actually going to make a run. I mean, I have a personal example with this, KB, and this is I am watching the same story. I am watching a rerun. Louisville basketball after Rick Pitino. Now, they went through scandals, so that's not like Indiana, okay? Indiana just made bad hires. They went through scandals, and, they came out on the other side, and they had Chris Mack. You remember Chris Mack? Now he's at college at Charleston. He was a well-thought-of coach there at Xavier. The thought was that he was going to be the Louisville coach or someone big was going to take a shot at him. I know IU fans probably at some point mentioned his name in their different coaching searches, and he got to Louisville, and he had some good moments, but in the end, he got sideways. He had a coach try to extort him in Dino Gaudio. The FBI was called in. The school president didn't like him very much. And, of course, then she left in the middle of she's the Penn State Neely Bendapudi, by the way, if you care. James Franklin thanked her a couple different times in his college football playoff run. And so when that was such a disaster, KB, that when that ended, you had to bring back one of your own. And that's the similarity that Indiana has kind of gone through here, that after the debacle, and Archie Miller just was he was an AH when he was here. And he didn't win. He wasn't a very good coach and everything else. But, you had to get back to one of your own. And the old guard at Louisville led the way and basically handcuffed the AD, which I think has happened to some extent with Scott Dolson here, and said, we're going to put in one of our old-timers. And Louisville put in Kenny Payne, and in 2 seasons, he won 12 games. In 2 seasons, he won 12 games. The worst coaching hire ever. Mike Woodson is not that. I want to be clear. He's not that, but it is also clear that he's not going to work out. And when it doesn't work out, you have the new guard, you have the students that you saw, you have people that listen to this radio program and this radio station that are going to say, fire Mike Woodson, and then you have the old guard that you mentioned, 40 years ago, Mike Woodson wearing the Indiana jersey, that still want to hold on to that want to believe in that want to believe in the only way we're going to win is a guy that understands the Indiana basketball program. And if I'm a Hoosier fan, I'm pissed off that we're doing this. You had a chance to hire Dusty May last year. How's he doing at Michigan? You wanted Dusty May. Well, now you're not going to get Dusty May. He's at Michigan, and we won't get into who they could hire because I honestly have no idea. But I'm watching a rerun. What Louisville did an hour and a half down the road is exactly what Indiana has done. And now there's going to be, between the old guard and the new guard, between Mike Woodson and this fan base, there's going to be toxicity that will last forever. And it lasts there with Louisville and Kenny Payne, and it's going to be there with Mike Woodson and Indiana. And you had a chance to do what Purdue did with Ryan Walters. Understand, we don't have the guy that's any good. And you pay the money because you're in a big boy conference, making all the millions of dollars from being in the Big Ten and the TV money and everything else, and you go and you make the move and you go get somebody else. And that somebody else could have been Dusty May. And Dusty May, I think, would have taken the job. He would have turned down Michigan. He turned down Louisville. And you go be the head coach. And it's an embarrassment. What you saw last night, and guess what? It ain't over yet. I mean, they have more 20, 25-point losses in the clip.
4 or 5 on the road coming up here for Indiana. Again, I don't say the words lightly, but I will continue to reiterate what I said to lead off the show. I think it's just pure arrogance and pure laziness from the head coach of the Indiana University basketball program.
But why would he think any different? If we bring up Quinn Buckner or those people in power, they have empowered Mike Woodson with this level of job security and arrogance that, yes, it's Mike Woodson, but it goes beyond Mike Woodson.
Well, certainly, certainly it does. I mean, I don't know. You would hope, and again, I've probably echoed something like this in regards to the Colts and Jim Irsay and Chris Bauer. You would hope at some point there is a final straw of you just no longer accept that for your program, business, franchise, however you want to describe it. But with Woodson, it's arrogance in coaching staff hires, it's arrogance in roster construction, it's arrogance and refusal to admit that the three-point line matters a whole lot more in today's world of basketball. And then I thought we saw laziness last night. You give up 60 in the first 60 There are a lot of college basketball teams that don't score 60 in a game.
No, I mean, it's just loafing up
You
and down
give up
the floor.
60 in the first half in your own building. All we hear, the vaunted road to the Big Ten. You give up 60 and you throw out the same starting five for the second half. You're lazy in your recruitments of 5 stars in your own backyard of Braylon Mullins and Jalen Harrelson. At some point, you would hope the arrogance and the laziness would catch up to him.
I have a buddy we'll go to break here. Stephen Holder going to join us in about 6-7 minutes or so. I have a buddy, huge Indiana fan, and he's tired of Mike Woodson, and he was actually on the Mike Woodson isn't very good well before, like I was. I got to be honest. I thought, okay, this might work out as an NBA guy. He got Trace Jackson Davis to be better. He beat Purdue a couple times, and you're thinking, okay, so
he's an under 500 coach in the NBA. I'm tired of this. Like he coached in the NBA. What does that mean?
Well,
he hasn't been in college basketball in 40 years.
Agreed. My argument would be NBA coaching is better than college basketball coaching, I guess. And he can work himself to where Mike Woodson, okay, he can't beat the Chicago Bulls, but he's going to be able to beat, Syracuse or Michigan State. But that's not the case. And I have a buddy who's a big basketball guy. He's a basketball Benny, okay? He brought up a name to me last night. He said the name. Mark, he said the name. He says, you know who I want? I know Scott Drew's name is out there. I know Jeff Goodman put that out.
No, boy.
People are going to do Brad Stevens, and it's ridiculous.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Stevens.
No, the name. He goes, you know who I want?
Pearl?
I want Micah Shrewsbury. That's what he said. I go, you know what?
You'll have to fight Kevin Bowen.
I go, you know what? There might be a man in a Speedo that you might have to battle. But you know what?
I'll see him on the north side of the circle here in a week. I'd like a word with him.
That's a good
I'll
name.
be in
With
the
a
Kelly
gorgeous
green Speedo, sir.
gorgeous green Speedo, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. He
Not
said,
the blue bulge.
He said, I want Micah Shrewsbury. And I said, yes, you do. You better believe. That's a great name. That's exactly who you
How about
want.
Chris Beard in Bloomington?
I think he's rehabbed his image enough. I think basketball-wise, I think the world of Chris Beard. Again, we can do this at other times, but yeah, Chris Beard come in and he cleaned this crap up. There's no doubt about it. So we'll take a break. Coming up on the other side, what now for the Colts, and what did he think of the end of the year presser from Chris Ballard? Stephen Holder, ESPN. He joins us next.
Stephen Holder from ESPN joins us as we recap going back to Chris Bauer's presser on Friday and look ahead to the Colts offseason. I actually want to start here. Stephen, I found it fitting that on the coldest day we've had in a while, I think your latest on ESPN.com is you're writing about frostbite in the NFL. That was a very, very good piece, by the way.
The weather gods work in your favor. I think it was very timely, so had no idea it would work out that way. But yeah, that was wild. Basically, recapping wasn't my idea, but one of our editors came up with this idea to look back at the Dolphins-Chiefs playoff game from last postseason. And in that game, you might recall, the temperatures were around -4, and the wind chill was like -28, 29. It's, I think, the fourth or fifth coldest game in NFL history. So it's pretty wild. And there were literally frostbite injuries from the game, which is just incredible. I mean, you go outside today, you might understand. And I actually this story has had me thinking about cold for way too long. I was out there shoveling snow the other day, and my hands were really cold, obviously. And I kept thinking to myself, man, I better go inside. I don't know, I can't feel my hands. And it was like the subconscious thing messing with my head. So maybe I've been too indulgent in this story for a while. But anyway, I digress.
A little breaking news here, Colts-wise. Yeah. I don't think this is the most shocking thing based off what we saw a couple years ago with them playing in Germany, but announced just here in the last couple of minutes, the Colts will not only play in Germany coming up next season. This will be Berlin. Last year it was Frankfurt, or I guess 2 years ago it was Frankfurt. But they also will give up one of their home games. Next season we're excited to host the NFL's first ever regular season game in Berlin. Steven, that they had to be one of the last teams to kind of give up one of their home games, right? From an international, when they went over to London in 2016, that was a Jags home game. And in 2023, that was a Patriots home game.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I think that's right. They haven't given up one. And I know Jim Irsay was always very resistant to doing that. They used to kind of find teams that were agreeable to giving up the home game. And there's no financial, like, disenfranchisement. So the league compensates you for whatever revenue you would lose, and you might even come out ahead. I don't know, but you don't lose any money as a franchise, so that's fine. But it was more for Irsay. It was more like, well, I want to make sure our fans are taken care of, and I don't want to give up any home games. So two things have happened. Number one, I can't speak to how ticket sales are going, but fans are not that thrilled right now. That's one thing. But then the other thing is, with the sort of unbalanced schedule, some years you have 9 home games anyway. So I don't remember. Where are we at on that? They have 9 this year, or are they going to have 8 next year? I can't remember.
I thought they had 9. I think they have 9 next year, but I need to double check that.
Which would make sense, right? So if you're giving up one of 9 versus one of 8, you'd be more agreeable to that. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. The other notable thing, as you mentioned, Berlin. Which I think is the preferable city. I mean, Berlin's like a world-class, top-notch city from everything I've ever heard. So that's cool.
Yeah, this sounds like this would be in their Olympic Stadium, 74,000. Remember Frankfurt, Andy? That was what? That was like Stephen, did you go, Stephen? 30 or 40,000 or something like that?
I did not go to Frankfurt, but I know what you're going to say. The stadium was not what you might think of as an American football stadium. From all accounts. So this, I guess, would be different in that regard. I would say, having been to London a couple times, when you play at Wembley, it's a big deal, man. You've been there. So, I mean, it feels like an event. It's a big stadium. It's a big league stadium. So that I think makes a difference.
Yeah, the Colts had 8 home games this year, so it'd be 9 next year.
There you go.
And Steven, it's too bad you didn't travel abroad last year. You could have seen Machine Gun Kelly sing Country Roads. I'm sure you really missed that. And then I'm a conspiracy theorist, okay, Steven? So Stephen Holder with us, ESPN. KB, you tell me as well. The Colts 4 minutes ago tweeted this out that they're going to be in Berlin. On the graphic, they have DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Taylor, and Quinn Nelson. No Anthony Richardson.
Well, probably. Probably makes some sense to leave him off the marketing material for now.
Hey, it's
Go with the guys on the side of your building right now, which hasn't always been a guarantee either.
Well, it's a good point. Stephen Older with us from ESPN. Just throwing that out there. That's their graphic, not mine. So yesterday, Rick Venturi was on. Always love when coach is on with JMV. And in one point that he made is, listening to Ballard and just, football-wise, his brain working, he believes Richardson, Steichen, Ballard, all tied at the hip, and this coming season, next year, will be the final ride for those guys to see if they can figure it out. Do you believe that to be true as well?
Yeah, I largely agree with that. And I think for as much as there is a lot of outcry about retaining Chris Ballard, I think if you're surprised, then you haven't really thought this through. I'm not saying it's a right or wrong move. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the reality is that you have a coach who's been in place for 2 seasons and a quarterback who's played effectively one entire season because of his injuries. Teams are not likely to make permanent decisions on individuals after that short a period of time, at least a functioning franchise, right? Then you have some of the other decisions that have been made around the league lately. That's a different story. But anyhow, that's typically not going to happen. So if you were to remove Chris Ballard now, then what you're effectively saying is those guys are done, because that's in practice how it would play out. In fact, it'd make more sense to get rid of everybody right now, because you're effectively cutting them off, because you're not going to hire a new general manager and have him commit to a coach who's already been on the job a couple of years and still has questions. That's not going to happen. I mean, Chris Ballard got hired in 2017, and Jim Irsay said, okay, hey, here's your coach, Chuck Pagano. You guys figure it out.
Right.
Well, I mean, it was a joke, right? I mean, Chris Ballard walked in the door knowing, I don't want this guy, because general managers want their own coach. That's just how it works. So anyway, I just think from a practical standpoint, it just made it much, much more likely that Chris Ballard was going to stay, unless you have decided you're done with the other 2 guys in this equation as well. For better or worse, right or wrong, it just is what it is.
And Stephen Holder from ESPN with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Stephen, what was different for you from Ballard on Friday? I thought there were maybe 2 items specifically that I heard a different Chris Ballard in terms of his, I would call maybe process or approach, however you want to describe it. What stood out to you, if anything?
Well, I think for one, I mean, he has certainly, I think, admitted mistakes in the past. That's not new. I thought what was different this time is he said, I got to rethink my philosophy. Now, he has never said that. I mean, just 6 months ago, okay, we sat there in Westfield and he said, this is what I believe in. And if it gets me fired, so be it. All right. That same guy now 6 months later is like, okay, you know what? I don't know about all that. That's a hell of a difference. Okay. Now you can choose to not believe it, and that is totally reasonable as a Colts fan. But all I'm saying is this guy ain't ever said that. This is different. And in fact, he has been objectively resistant to the idea that his philosophy didn't work in the past. And now if you recall, this is not making me heroic. I'm just saying the first question I asked was, did you go too far and were you too rigid in your philosophy? And the first words out of his mouth were, yes. I've never heard him admit that. So I think the question is going to be, what does different, quote unquote, look like for Chris Ballard? And that's what we have to find out. But the admission, I think, is important.
Yeah, I thought free agency sounded a little different in terms of we got to kind of get the ball over the goal line, if you want to make the football analogy to it. Better job identifying guys that we feel like fit, but then also kind of finishing off deals. And then I thought it was the most critical he's ever been of his own locker room. There was a quote real late in the presser, where he mentions we got to find more tough guys. Boy, that's a big phrase. Tough guys, that's a big compliment when you describe football players and when you call out, your own team. And again, you could answer every question with, he's the one at fault for this, sure. But for him to say we don't have enough tough guys, I thought that was probably the most damning towards the locker room that I had heard him.
Yeah, and I think that dovetails into another related issue, which is that part of the problem, maybe the fundamental problem, is that he has always had this predisposition where he loves his guys maybe more than everybody else out there. And I think you should like your players. You picked them, right? Because if you don't, then I don't know what we're doing here. But you can't like them so much to the exclusion of the idea even that there could be better options out there. So what he is doing, I think he didn't just open the door. I thought he kicked the door open to the idea that they're not good enough. And that's something that I really felt after the Denver game is when I think I woke up the next morning and said, you know what, this group it's over for this group. And that doesn't mean you're going to tear it down to the studs. You can't. I think they're better than that. But it does mean that this core that Chris Ballard has bent over backwards to keep together, I said at that point, even before the Giants game, this has run its course. It's time to change. And I'm thinking he's thinking the same way now.
Stephen Holder with us, ESPN at ESPN.com. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and I agree with you waking up the next morning after that Denver game thinking they're just going to have to make changes. So a lot of work to do. How much can they get accomplished? That's one question, but the big question is quarterback. I mean, you saw which quarterbacks made the look at the playoffs. Who made the playoffs this year? Go look at their quarterbacks. And this past weekend, Stephen, the better quarterback advanced in the playoffs. So with Anthony Richardson, you may not know the answer, but how much the tone was different on Friday from Chris Ballard, right? How different do they feel about Richardson now after a couple seasons than the guy they took a couple years in the top 5?
I mean, I think they're just being honest, and that's all we can really ask, I think, as a public. And the honesty is this: the honesty is we're 2 years in and we don't know, and that's a tough pill to swallow. That's pretty tough. Now, the thing that's complicated about Anthony Richardson, I know it's very easy to say, look at the numbers, and they're unsightly. Right? You want to turn your head. Okay, they are what they are. But the one thing I'd say about the playoffs is like it's oftentimes it's the quarterbacks who can do not just the routine stuff, but the quarterbacks that can do stuff that is beyond routine, that can make the otherworldly kinds of plays. Josh Allen's a great example of that, and then Lamar Jackson, obviously. And Anthony Richardson has that capability, and that is the frustration with him, is that if he could do the routine stuff, he could maybe become one of those guys one day. But if you can't do the routine stuff, then there's no way you can be that, because you can't be an elite quarterback without making the routine plays. And Chris Ballard, I think, made reference to this when he said, we know about the big plays, but we got to have consistency. And that is the dilemma with Anthony Richardson. I don't want people to lose sight of this, right? I mean, they mock him and make fun of it and the whole thing, and I get it, right? It's bad, but this ability he has, I think it is unbelievable. But can he ever harness it? I just don't know, and they don't know, and that's the problem.
Again, Stephen Holder from ESPN with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Stephen, last one from me. Of the handful of names we've seen now mentioned for the opening, a defensive coordinator, do you make anything of the names or whatever, stylistically, that we could see a change here from Gus Bradley?
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see in terms of who they hire, what exactly that scheme looks like. It will differ slightly depending on who it is. But I would say this, there's nobody, I would say, in that group that runs anything remotely close to what Gus Bradley runs. So you mentioned stylistically, right? Stylistically, this is, for the most part, almost a 180 from what they've done. And I think that's a good thing. I don't necessarily have like an aversion to playing, sort of heavy zone with the 4-man front and, not blitzing too much. I don't fundamentally, I don't have like an aversion to that. I think the question is, why hasn't it worked? And for whatever reason, the version that they have run under Gus Bradley has not worked. I know that there's a lot of talk about the lack of complexity in his defense, because the idea is yeah, you know what we're going to run, but can you beat it? And the answer is yes, they can beat it. And so what you've got to do is you've got to give the defense, or excuse me, give the offense more complexity. This is just part of it, but I think it's a big part. More complexity for the offense to have to make some calculations. If the quarterback knows exactly where he's going with the ball 3 seconds before the snap, then you're cooked. And that just seemed to be the case all the time with the Colts. And then they had a good front four, but basically the way to beat them was just throw it just a little bit quicker, and you're going to be able to complete the pass. They're possibly going to miss a tackle, and then you got a big play. That's the formula. It's not that hard, right? So my point is, it's okay to play zone. It's okay to not blitz, but the way you go about it matters. The details matter. And these guys, they are definitely more aggressive and will have more complexity, and I think that's a good thing.
Very fitting, his latest on ESPN, football frostbite and a borderline inhumane NFL playoff night. It was quite the read from Stephen Holder, certainly a big look at last year, that Chiefs-Dolphins playoff game at Arrowhead. Stephen, as always, man, thank you. I know our conversations will probably quiet down a bit here in the offseason, but really appreciate all your time throughout the year.
Hey, we'll talk a lot during that big free agency season, I'm sure.
Yes, cannot wait for that.
It better be a big free agency
Put it on your
season.
calendars in March.
That's right.
Stephen Holder right there from ESPN. Again, announced at the start of that interview, Colts will play in Berlin next year. That is at that Olympic Stadium. Very historic, certainly going back to Jesse Owens in 1936, also hosted the World Cup back in 2006. Again, this will be a Colts home game. It remains to be seen, obviously, what that does to ticket prices for the home slate. Remember, the NFL a handful of years ago, Andy adopted, I don't know if a handful, but certainly like 3 years ago, a 17th game to the schedule. So that meant every other year you would have a 9th home game. This coming year, the Colts have the 9th home game. Their home slate, obviously you have the AFC South teams. You have Cardinals, 49ers, Raiders, Broncos, Dolphins, and then the additional game is the Falcons. The NFC South, you finish second in the AFC South. Falcons finish second in the NFC South. So remains to be announced who the opponent will be. They said that'll come out in May when the schedule's announced. But again, the Colts have yet to host an international game. It was New England and Frankfurt last year. It was Jacksonville back in 2016 in London. They will do that this year in Berlin.
I'm already kind of thinking it's going to be the Cardinals game. I don't know why I have that hunch. I just feel like Cardinals, Colts in Berlin.
Yeah, because we send crappy teams a lot of times over there. That flight's like 13 hours, too. That flight ain't no joke,
Is it
KB.
that long?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure you got to go to
God, I
Indianapolis
thought it was like
too.
6 to London when we went. Gosh, is it really that long?
I just looked it up. How long of a flight is it from Indianapolis to
Yeah.
Berlin? It says 12 hours and 12 minutes.
Jeez.
So, and that's a layover. You probably got to go to another city, a bigger city. You got to sit in the airport, drink 3 beers in the airport by yourself next to your luggage, then get on a flight. So, I know you don't sleep well on flights, and neither do
No.
I, but I hope Kenny Moore does. Whoever the quarterback, hope Quinn Nelson does.
And I don't know if really people care about it, but, basically NFL teams have an international market that they can market in, and the Colts have Germany as, when you think about Bernard Reimann from Austria, and Bjorn Werner is kind of, maybe it's giving him too much credit, but he's kind of like the Pat McAfee over there in terms of an NFL personality. So I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion that whenever this happened, Germany would be the spot, and indeed it will be. First ever NFL game in Berlin.
Quickly, let's do this before we get to a check down here. I alluded to it at the beginning of the Holder interview. Figured I'd let people hear it. It's about 50 seconds or so. Here's Coach Venturi yesterday on with JMV, and this is what I asked him. Coach believes that the quarterback and the head coach and the GM are all tied together, and this coming season is going to be their final exam, if you will, to see if they can turn things around. Go ahead, Mark.
I think what this statement is at this point is that Steichen and Ballard and Richardson are tied at the hip. And they're tied at the hip, and I think the mandate, I don't know this for sure, but my gut feeling is the mandate from Jim is this. You 3 guys fix it, and I'll give you 1 year to fix it. And then if you don't fix it, then Armageddon will be here. And I believe that totally. I believe that, I believe we're in the 9th inning here, literally. And I think because of the Richardson, the investment in Richardson, the 4th pick in the draft, enough faith in Steichen, and basically, this draft pick let him live it out. I think now, though, however, after 2 years of it, I think they're on the line totally. I think it is a must season now. It is a make or break season for those guys.
I want to agree with that. I just feel like until it happens with a guy like Chris Ballard, if they don't make the postseason, he's through contract to 2026. I don't know. There's just a part of me that wonders when the end will actually be here. But I think mostly Colts fans want to agree with that. Do they not?
Well, I would argue most Colts fans would want to agree with it prior to 2025.
Probably,
we did the poll, right? 95% of people disagree with Jim Irsay's decision to run it back. So, yeah, I mean, I think that you would hope that he's right. But, again, I would argue that prior years deserved the ninth inning analogy that Coach Venturi throws out there. Great listen with him and John yesterday. That is up on the podcast. All right, coming up at 9, we'll obviously talk some Indiana basketball with Bob Kravitz, but also Saturday is the 10-year anniversary of Deflategate. Bob Kravitz broke it and quickly became the most hated man in the Boston area.
This is one of the darkest days in Boston sports history.
Which, by the way,
was that the morning after Kravitz?
Kravitz had to love that.
Being
the most hated man in Boston. What a great thing to be.
It was an eerie night in Foxborough.
It changes day to day.
It does.
That night, I'll kind of give some thoughts. I was there and in the press box, and it was just looking back on it. I guess there were some tea leaves, but certainly we'll get Bob's thoughts on a very infamous day here upcoming. And let's hit a morning checkdown before we get to that.
All right, yeah, it bleeds, it leads, and so we lead with Indiana last night. What a debacle last night in Bloomington, 94-69. That's their final. The Illini walk in, and they just smack Indiana around. Illinois scored 60 points in the first half. It was 60-32 at halftime, so the game wasn't close. Here's Mike Woodson postgame on the loss.
Long season, man. I mean, you can't throw in the towel. We didn't play well the first half, but we were awful. I thought we came out the second half and we competed, played a lot better, but the damage was already done in the first half. You got to give Illinois a lot of credit, their coaching staff. They played great.
Illinois, I do like that. Coming up next for the Hoosiers, it's a Friday matchup on the road at Ohio State, 8 o'clock on Fox.
Arrogant and lazy. Those are two words I would use to describe Mike Woodson. All right, last night over Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 127-117. The Pacers lose. That 6-game win streak, all by double digits, comes to an end. I thought mostly about what you expected. Without Tyrese Halliburton for the first time all year, I didn't expect the Pacers necessarily to sweep Cleveland in these 2 games in 3 nights. They certainly hung in there, but couldn't make that serious run at him in the fourth. Probably the notable item from the game, Benedict Mathurin gets tossed, deservedly so, late in that one. As much as I disagreed with the chin-up technical there in the first half, that was that woman official. I believe Natalie is her first name. She teed him up. He clearly was upset, and I think that contributed to him certainly crossing the line. Andy, I thought there.
Yeah, he's going to get a game.
I don't know if he intended to bump her, but he did, and typically when that happens, it leads to significant fines and possibly a suspension. So we'll await that news with Mathurin. Again, Halliburton, it's a left groin injury, not hamstring, left groin. So his status for tomorrow night remains up in the air. It's at Detroit, Philly at home on Saturday, and then off to Paris next week.
Yeah, last one for me. Purdue fans better have the coffee ready tonight. 9:30, Big Ten Network, number 17, Purdue on the road. It's a West Coast trip. They get Washington. Purdue a 7.5-point favorite on the road, KB. Washington, I haven't seen much of them at all. Just 10-7, 1-5 in the Big Ten. Again, that game tonight, 9:30. You going to stay up for this one? 9:30 on the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, I'll give it probably a half-assed effort. Butler, Seton Hall over at Hinkle. Butler's lost $1 million in a row. They somehow are a 6.5-point favorite. I guess Seton Hall is horrific. Seton Hall's won 9 of 10 in this series, by the way.
Oh, really? Have they really? Yeah, I haven't seen Seton Hall at all this year. Yeah, not a second. So, reminder, coming up at 9 o'clock, Bob Kravitz will join us on the other side. What does KB remember about that night 10 years ago in Foxborough? We'll talk about it next here on The Fan.
So when the 10-year anniversary of the Colts' last home playoff game pops up on the calendar, which we had that a couple of weeks ago, Andy, that means that the Colts beat Cincinnati 10 years ago inside of their own building in the wild card round. They then went to Denver and certainly ushered in, honestly, I think one of the more underrated moments of the Indianapolis Colts. I think obviously so many people very understandably point to the Peyton era, but beating Peyton on the road in a playoff game to get to the AFC title game, Vontae Davis, rest in peace, is absolutely incredible in that game. Low-scoring game. So they win there in the divisional round. They go to the AFC title, and that game, Andy, is probably, which maybe is a good thing for the Colts, it's not remembered for the Colts getting their ass kicked in Foxborough. It's probably mostly remembered for Deflategate. So the 10-year anniversary of that is Saturday. Bob Kravitz, who broke that story, is going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock to talk more about what he remembers. I guess from a national standpoint, Andy, what do you recall?
Okay. It's difficult because now, I went this morning, and you need to go on the internet and go to the Wikipedia page and just all the graphs they have, the PSI levels and everything. So part of me always laughed at this.
That acronym, PSI, I swear I heard that a million times.
Part of me always laughs on how ridiculous it is. Part of me, I'm really interested in what you and Bob Kravitz have for covering that. And how it was covered, understanding, the battle here between the Patriots and the Colts and what that meant over the years and the decade and everything else. I remember it being ridiculous. I remember kind of being pulled in two different directions, that I wanted to see the New England Patriots burn, but I have two of my best friends in the world are huge Patriot fans, so I also saw it through their eyes. And then on top of it, of course, Tom Brady was suspended for 4 games and they went 3-1. That was kind of the lasting thing as well. Tom Brady was finally suspended, and remember they played They played Jimmy G in 2 games. He got injured, and then they had to play Brissett who's still around starting games this year in the NFL. They had to play Jacoby twice, and they won one of those games. And so in the end, he got suspended for 4 games. And of course, the Patriots went 3-1. But I mean, obviously the Patriots were always skirting the rules wherever they could. I mean, we all know that. We all understand that.
Yeah, a couple things stand out to me. Again, I was fortunate to be in Gillette Stadium that night. I remember how seasonably warm it was. I remember that the Colts-Patriots game got pushed back a little bit because the NFC title game of Seahawks-Packers went into overtime. Do you remember that, how wild that finish was? The onside kicks.
Okay, it was that game.
So that was the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl is what it turned into. So Marshawn Lynch not giving him the ball on the goal line. But I remember it went a little later. And I guess just to kind of set the scene here, oftentimes you will have the general manager of the visiting team sitting in just kind of the generic press box of a stadium. So Ryan Grigson, in that case, was the Colts GM at the time, and he is sitting in the press box. And I remember kind of being in the vicinity of him and Pete Ward, the COO. And, oftentimes, you will have an injury occur during a game. There are phones up there in the press box, and the sideline will phone up to their team and say, hey, whatever, Mike Adams has got a knee injury, he's questionable to return, et cetera, et cetera. So Grigson fields a call, and next thing you know, he goes over to talk to Pete Ward. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, I mean, again, hindsight is beyond 2020 now that I look back on it, but I'm thinking, that's rare. Like, you never see like Grigson like all of a sudden go down to the COO and be like, hey, this is what is happening. Well, I now connecting the dots, that is DeQuell Jackson recording the interception that he did in that game, coming to the sideline, them getting the ball, and them realizing, hey, we think something is up. And I think they were tipped off by a couple things. First off, you go back to their first meeting that season. They played in Lucas Oil Stadium, so indoors. Back in November, Mike Adams picked off Brady twice in that game. New England also played Baltimore the week prior in their divisional round game. And I think the connections there, Chuck Pagano being with Baltimore, I think there was a little bit of this brewing, kind of whether it's the Colts realizing it or, again, the Ravens in that case realizing it. And they had a little bit of an inkling that something could be up here in terms of the PSI of the ball. DeQuell Jackson picks Brady off. I think at that point they were already down 14-0. gosh, if I remember correctly, I want to say Josh Cribbs. Remember Josh Cribbs?
Oh, I remember Josh Cribbs.
I want to say he muffed an early punt in that game.
So when Ward and Grigson had the conversation, it was maybe 14-0. I was wondering, that was going to be in my phone.
So that
would
have been after DeQuell's pick.
Okay.
And then that conversation happened. And then I think, from there you inform the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt like, and Kravitz can tell us when he joins us at 9, I felt like Kravitz broke it maybe a couple hours after the game ended. And then obviously it all unfolded from there. So I don't know. It's probably a storyline that honestly, Andy, became more prominent in their neck of the woods. For us, it was just, well, look at the cheaters cheating again.
Yeah. Right.
And
was there a sense of,
we could have,
hey, we caught him? Was there a sense with Indianapolis, people like, good, we caught him, even though he got
I think it was more of
in the game?
We could have played with a beach ball or knives coming out of the ball, and we still would have lost.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of like, whatever, cheater. But I think the general thought was, I forget the final score, 45-7, 45-10, something like that. Remember Trent Richardson not making the trip? There was a lot of just weird stuff happening around that time. But yeah, those are kind of my general memories if I try to drum it back 10 years ago.
All right, I have a question and then something, and then just I had forgotten that it was around this that something was launched because of this. My question is, do you believe that the Colts got bad mojo from being, one of the main franchise here telling on the New England Patriots?
Yeah, I think there are some people that do believe that.
There's a little bit of a football curse that's been put on them.
You should not, be a tattletailer.
Oh, that's number one. And then number two, this happened in 15.
I think it was a bad look when you get your ass kicked and you're telling.
I think the final score was the biggest problem.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing, this helped launch Barstool Sports. It's just kind of a weird thing. If you remember, 2015 is when Dave Portnoy and a couple of those knuckleheads, remember they handcuffed themselves together and they went to Roger Goodell. They went to the NFL offices in New York and they got thrown out and they got arrested for the day or the night.
And they wanted to see Kravitz in an alley like I want to see Brian Kelly in an alley.
Hey, Brian Kelly said he's rooting for Notre Dame. Did you see that? He told CBS Sports, hey, I recruited some of these guys. Of course I'm rooting for Notre Dame.
Respectfully, he can kiss my ass.
Well, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I don't
Stop
want Brian
it. Don't act like, I want, I want everything good for my ex.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
No.
Exactly.
You stabbed the knife in our backs. None of it. We don't want them.
See, that's how I would feel. I would prefer, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, that Brian Kelly.
I recruited some of those guys. Shut up.
That's him taking.
None of it.
It's him taking, Mark, that's him taking a percentage of this national title run. That's what Brian Kelly's doing.
I just remember from the Deflategate, the Wells report. And I just remember watching Tom Brady walk in and out of courtrooms.
I mean, it got ridiculous.
And what was the nickname for the ball guy? Was it Ball Guy? Didn't they have a nickname for one of the equipment staff members?
Was it Deflator? Wasn't it that?
Man.
Was it that direct?
I thought it was.
I'm going to have to try to find that again.
Jim McNally.
Like, I'm looking here. On November 25th, 2015, MIT professor John Leonard posted a lecture on YouTube titled Taking the Measure of Deflategate, in which he explained why the exponent portion of the Wells report contained technical failures that led to an incorrect conclusion.
Gosh, I'm so... again, I think the anniversary deserves a little bit of remembrance, but I don't want to spend any more time on it than we will today.
I just remember it took years, and you're like, this is still going on? My God.
It did.
It never ended.
It was a solid story for, 2 years?
Yeah.
At least?
By the way, speaking of Brian Kelly, I still need to share my story about the woman that I met yesterday that has just invigorated more belief in me about Notre Dame winning it all on Monday.
All right. Well, we'll do that on the other side. Plus, Matt Miller.
She has a tattoo.
Oh,
did I tell you this?
No, I don't know anything about this woman that you met. So, all right. So KB met a woman who's now made him feel better about Monday's national title game. I
really hope Maddie isn't listening to this time.
That's why I explained it, just in case the family was in the car. So we'll get to that. Plus,
Thank you for having my back.
What did Matt Miller say about Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State? We'll let you hear that sound as well. Kravitz at 9 o'clock. Appreciate you hanging out with us. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Again, a reminder, this news broke earlier in the 8 o'clock hour. Colts headed to Berlin next year, one of their own home games. So they have 9 home games on next year's slate. They are one of the, 8 to 10. I think they're kind of a small bunch of teams left to give up one of their home games for an international contest. Remains to be seen who the opponent will be. That'll be announced later in 2025. But, boy, you talk about travel next year. They play in L.A. twice, Chargers, Rams, play in Seattle, Arrowhead, and Berlin. That's quite. Last year, I think the longest trip was Denver.
I was about to say, where was it? It was Denver.
They're getting frequent flyer miles.
Yes,
in
they are.
2025.
Quite the busy slate for the Colts. And again, this is a home game for them. We'll wait to see how this impacts ticket prices and all that.
Again, I'm not a huge fan. I let this be known of. I understand why they're doing it. The NFL going, to other places. Not in the United States, obviously, whether it be London or Berlin, Frankfurt, whatever it is. But now it's a norm, and I don't know if you're a good team, you go over there. It's great publicity, right?
If
you're the Colts,
great team to go over there.
Well, yeah, that's a great point. So, and we'll say, I think Mark's right. He's like, you're going to end up playing the Arizona Cardinals. Yep. I could totally see.
I've got a hunch.
Cardinals,
I don't know why.
Colts coming to Berlin, but
Michael Penix, maybe?
there you go. Listen,
Falcons, Colts.
I think you should make that trip. I'd love to make that trip. I know I'm not making that trip.
Yeah.
To 13 hours in the plane, no thank you. But, for the fans that can go over there that have the means, I'm sure it's a fun trip, and it's a bigger stadium, so probably a little bit easier to get tickets.
You should forego going to the national championship game and just use that money, allocate those funds to the Colts in Berlin.
Yeah, it's easy.
I can't think of a worse idea.
Well, plus, if you're a Colts fan and an IU fan, you don't have to worry about any postseason.
That's
So
right.
think how much money you're saving. You don't have to go travel for the NCAA tournament. Come on.
Arrogance and laziness on full display last night from Mike Woodson, per usual. We'll hit on that here in a few. I do need to share yesterday, okay?
All right,
So
so
this
let's
lady, she invigorates my Notre Dame spirit for Monday night.
Okay.
What?
So where was this?
Calm down.
So Rosie, just a hair under the weather, just not eating maybe quite normally. So, Maddie's like, hey, after the show, will you take her to go get a smoothie? I'm like, sure, great idea. So Rosie and I go and get a smoothie, and I'm wearing that Notre Dame winter hat that's back there on that chair. That old school winter hat that I wear probably way too much.
Just about every day.
Yeah. And so, literally knitted.
Literally, you wear that every day in here. Yeah.
Probably knitted in 1976 by my grandmother. So I'm rocking that. I kind of forget that it's on. Lady says to me, oh, you cheering for the Irish coming up on Monday? And all of a sudden, I'm kind of like, well, yeah. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I'm like,
nice little conversation
how
starter.
about you? And, then she looks at Rosie, and Rosie luckily gives her a, go Irish. I'm like, okay, thank you. I needed that, Rosie. And all of a sudden she goes, well, yeah, of course I am. I have a tattoo on my back that says play like a champion.
Was it lower back?
I didn't ask.
Tell me it had to be lower back.
You let your imagination go wherever it needs to.
Slap that tattoo.
Yeah,
how about that? Play like a champion tattoo on her back. It gets better. Okay?
Okay.
We continue to make comments. She hates Ohio State. I'm all in. I'm like, yes, I could not agree more. Oh, how I hate Ohio State. Isn't that? I'll probably say that 1,000 times on Monday. Then she said, we start making small talk. I'm like, oh, how did you become a Notre Dame fan? She became a Notre Dame fan after watching Rudy.
Come on now.
Of course.
Jerry Goldsmith.
I said, here is Mark Dykton's number. You need to have a conversation. She goes, and actually, it goes back a little while before that. I had a crush on Sean Astin from his role in Goonies.
Okay.
So look at this.
I can understand that.
Romance alive and well with Rudy and Notre Dame.
Listen, there are a lot of things that we can't say on air if she had a lower back tattoo that said
stop. Today. We don't know where. All I know is this.
I kind of hinted at it already.
All I know is this. Play like a champion today, and now I believe. Will Howard is going to throw some. He's going to give Notre Dame some chances, baby.
Sure
Jeremiah Love, I thought looked healthier than I thought he would against Penn State. Now about 10 days off, I think that's going to be there. I believe.
You should believe.
Notre Dame 27-24.
I don't know. What will they do if they win the national title? Will they have a parade, or will it just be in the stadium?
Parade in South Bend.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been to South Bend, but
not much of a parade.
I'm not sure if there's a sorrier town in all of America.
I'm sure there is.
We're going to start at the Cathedral, and we're going to go to South Bend Cubs Stadium, and we're going to turn around.
Can't say Rick and I had a lot of small talk as we were making our way through South Bend the other night.
Understandable.
Brendan King might be like leading the parade.
He might be on a float.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is Brendan King going to try to overtake you as like the Notre Dame guy at the Fan? Because you are that. I mean,
did I tell you?
You are the Notre Dame fan of record. At least I believe you are here. But Brendan King, I don't know. What's happening with that?
Brendan King did go to the grotto for me a few weeks back.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Took a picture there of himself. Sent it to me. Are these the two most hated teams in college football?
Notre Dame is not that anymore, I don't believe.
I guess over time.
Yeah, over time.
I think now we hate the SEC.
Yeah, agreed.
But I don't know is there an individual team we hate in the SEC?
I think people grew tired of Alabama.
Yeah, but I mean, people have grown tired of the Chiefs.
Yeah,
I mean, do you really hate them?
I'm with you.
You're just jealous.
I don't think there's hate. I think you have a case to be made. People don't like Ryan Day. Very much at all. Yeah, they put in your face. You watch one of these games, how much they've spent, Ohio State, how much they've spent on NIL, and I think Marcus Freeman and perhaps this team, to some people, and maybe I am a part of that, has made Notre Dame a little bit more likable. No, Notre Dame's been hated for decades because they won't join a conference, and because they've got love. I mean, come on. They've got love, and they haven't ever joined a conference.
And I feel like people hate Ohio State.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, like Mark said, the SEC is one thing, but I think we're more tired of the SEC as a conference, more so than any specific team. Like, I don't hate Georgia, and they've won a couple titles. I don't hate Alabama and Nick Saban. I mean, at times they're hypocritical, but who isn't? I guess.
So after
sure, I'll go with that.
This lady informs me about her tattoo. I thought to myself, you know what? I'm in a good mood. Can I get some more evidence on why I believe Notre Dame's going to win? And I think back to last year's game, 17-14 in South Bend. Notre Dame, frankly, I think should have won the game. Had plenty of chances in the fourth quarter to seal that victory. We know the 10 men on the field. We know Ryan Day wanting a piece of Lou Holtz.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine Ryan Day sucker punching 87-year-old Lou Holtz.
I can.
So
I've
go.
been dreaming about it actually every single night.
Pops up on the news.
That would be
Atlanta PD.
Yeah, Bob Kravitz, you need to break that story. To hell with Deflategate. That's the story you need to break.
Lou Holtz on the ground in Buckhead Sunday night from Ryan Day, just smoking him in the face.
I mean, we kind of had that with Pedro putting Zimmer on the ground between the Yankees. That's the closest we ever got from an old man being beat
awful.
up.
That was Pedro. I lost all respect from Pedro when he threw Zimmer down. So then I thought to myself, okay, let's go back to last year's game. And again, I thought Notre Dame was very competitive in that game. And I just decided to look up the returning starters from that game. Okay, so how much, retention, if you will, from last year's game versus this year's game. Ohio State brings back 13 starters, and that doesn't include Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. Notre Dame brings back 6.
6, okay, yeah.
I'm like,
I thought it might be a little lopsided.
Oh,
yeah, but I mean, Notre Dame still is playing the same style of game. And
but Ohio State added their 2 best players, Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. I don't think Notre Dame added that.
I'm trying to pad it for you. You're more consistent at the quarterback position. Does that make you feel better?
I will say this, and this is really getting in the weeds with Riley Leonard and Will Howard, by the way. But I think if you describe Riley Leonard and Will Howard, I would argue only one of them has a great trait. And that's Leonard's running.
Yeah, Howard is
I just think Howard is look,
he's fine.
He's a fine quarterback, but Andy, you would look good throwing to those dudes.
I view him as he is a fine quarterback. I'm not going to overrate him. I'm not going to underrate him and call him a bum, but I don't think he's a Sunday quarterback. I don't think he's, they've had C.J. Stroud and
he throws a screen to Travion Henderson Fields, and he goes 70 yards for a touchdown. So
I know.
I bring that up to say this because again, Notre Dame's down their top 3 pass rushers and their top corner. So I'm not, holding my breath necessarily. But can you make Will Howard have to make Sunday throws? And I get it. He's thrown to a lot of dudes that are going to be on Sunday. So that helps him out majorly. But can you create tight windows? Can you create muddied pockets? Yeah, I think if you can do that, that's where we get back to the Kentucky Derby analogy of,
yep.
Oh boy, that horse didn't get out of the gate like they thought they would or they have. All of a sudden, can you put some game pressure? And again, I'm not acting like Leonard's going to all of a sudden go 7 of 8 in the fourth quarter when you need it the most. But I do think Leonard's legs, is a very potent threat.
Yeah, bring him into the mud. You know, Tennessee plays a similar style, you could say, to Notre Dame defense, run the football, a fine quarterback play, but not next level NFL Sunday starter quarterback play. And they just, they're down, 21-0 in that game, and it was over. You knew it was over. Tennessee wasn't going to be able now the rest of the game to play their game. So can Notre Dame get him into the mud? Bob Kravitz going to join us top of the hour. Can I get just 2 quick stories, NFL-wise, that I saw yesterday out there since we're having fun? Did you see, in Field Yates, who I like, we like him around here, Field Yates of ESPN, did you see what he said about the book that A.J. Brown was reading on Sunday? The name of the book, again, was by Jim Murphy. It was a book called Inner Excellence. You guys, we talked about this on Monday. It is now number 1 on Amazon's best-selling list. Did you know where it was before Sunday?
Probably at someone's bargain bin.
523,497.
It was at your local garage sale.
It was number 500,000 on the Amazon bestseller, and now it's number 1 because of that stupid book. I saw
some Philadelphia news anchors started off their 6 a.m. Monday show with reading the book.
Well, did you see what?
I mean, that is genius, viral marketing. If you're trying to get a book
I don't think A.J. Brown was going for that.
No, I don't think he was. But
Okay.
I mean, for that author, good for him.
So speaking of, just 2 quick other Philly stories. Number 1, did you see the guy, Mike Jarek? I believe that's how you say his name. He's a long time. He looks like a gentleman in his 60s. He is a one of the sports anchors there at one of the local TV stations. Did you happen to see what he did on the radio?
No.
Now this was on his legs. Okay.
He got to play like a champion tattoo?
This was on his upper legs.
Oh, jeez, man.
Okay. He got a Brazilian wax. And I'm showing KB the picture right now.
What the hell?
He got kind of like the 40-year-old virgin, if you remember that when
Wait, why? I'm confused.
I don't know. I don't have a reason for that. It must have been some sort of ha-ha bet or
there's
something.
There's not a connection there? There's not an Eagles connection?
Nope. To celebrate the return of the Philadelphia Eagles making a run to the postseason, the morning show in Philly, Mike Jarek got a Brazilian wax on live television.
Granted, that's probably how people view me with this damn Speedo.
I was about to say, we get a couple more years down the road, Mark. The shirt and the Speedo thing is going to run its course. Yeah. It's going to be old hat. We're going to have to come up with something else. And then, did you guys also see the dope in Philly? And I know this happens other places, but it happens there, obviously, more than anywhere else. Did you see the guy that was berating the woman? Have you guys followed this story?
Oh, yeah, the moron. Yeah.
So there's a guy named, and of course, the internet finds out who these people are. I mean, the internet's going to find out. So there's a Philly fan, again, a guy who looked like he's, Mark, maybe in his 50s, high 40s or 50s. He is berating this couple, and he is berating the woman over and over again, calling her terrible things. She was a Packer fan. For no reason. These people were not causing any sort of a scene. This was like a good seat, so it wasn't like they're sitting up in the 400 section or something like that. The internet found out who he was. Ryan Caldwell, his name. He got fired from his job.
As he should have.
I was going to say,
he got fired from his job.
Rather deserved, right?
I mean, it's just...
And he got banned from the Eagles stadium.
It's just... You got... I mean, to act like that's number one, but to act like that knowing that multiple people are videoing you, that takes a real different kind of moron and bad person. I mean, doesn't it? Anyway.
Well, I saw that they found out who he was, and they found his social medias and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and some of the stuff he's saying to the woman, they're like, "Would you say it to your mother, your kids, your wife, because he has daughters and everything?" like that.
Sure.
Good Lord, man, what are we doing? It's sports.
It's a football game, and by the way, you won the game easily. It was an easy win for the Eagles.
Making a sports team your personality is not. No, thank you.
It's how they ID themselves. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So, all right, let's take a break. Coming up on the other side, the 10-year anniversary of Deflategate, the man that broke the story, Bob Kravitz. He joins us next.
Just a reminder, this time tomorrow, Tom Crean is going to join us coming up here Thursday at 9 o'clock hour. Joe Wright's early tomorrow. That'll be around 7:40, 7:45, as we'll talk a little Colts with him. Speaking of Colts and an anniversary that we just touched on, a man that was all over that story, and unfortunately we probably do have to talk about what's in Bloomington as well. He is the great Bob Kravitz, joins us now. Bob, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, gentlemen. How are you?
We are well. Before we get to the infamous Deflategate, and you as continually, I think, the most hated man in the New England area, let's go to Bloomington to start. I have described the Mike Woodson era as arrogant and lazy. Or certainly, I think, him, frankly, in terms of how he's handled that program here over the last X amount of years. What do you make of last night? What do you make of where the Indiana basketball program continues to be?
Well, I think they're screwed because, 5 of their next 7 games are on the road. And I'm looking at that schedule, and I'm thinking, who are they going to be favored against? I mean, this team has got a one-way ticket to, 18-13 or 17-50, whatever. It's not going to be good, and they're not going to make the NCAA tournament. And, 2 years in a row, that just can't happen at Indiana. What pissed me off about the game last night, and, normally I don't get emotionally involved in these things, but I was angry watching the lack of effort last night. I mean, Omar Ballo, these guys, they're a bunch of mercenaries, and I don't think they understand what it means to wear that Indiana jersey and to play at Assembly Hall, because the effort level the lack thereof was egregious.
And, Bob, I think on top of it, people know in the NIL era, they know the Ballo's making $2 million to play basketball in Bloomington. They know.
Well, they've got a $5 million they're spending $5 million. This is the worst team money could buy. That's they're near the top of the NCAA when it comes to NIL coffers. And look, you can complain all you want about Malik Renew, but not being in there. But just a couple of days ago, we were all saying how much better they were with one big. Well, it's one or the other. So, it hurts to lose Renew, but they're getting spanked by 25 points here each of the last 2 games. So I don't know how much of a difference he would have made.
And BobKravitz.com, where you find his work. The great Bob Kravitz with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. All right, Bob, let's go into the memory bank. I shared with Andy some of my thoughts, about a half hour ago on what I recall from, what I remember being kind of a seasonably warm night in Foxborough and just everything that transpired kind of early in that game. And I'll never forget, sitting there probably a couple hours after the game and seeing your report, and then I can only imagine how your life changed after that. I guess I'll leave it pretty open-ended. What do you remember about that night and everything that transpired probably after the game?
I remembered how unbelievably lucky I was. And with most scoops like that, you're getting lucky. It wasn't like I was sitting there and I had some notion that something was going down. I did notice in the locker room that Grigson and Irsay and Pagano and I think Pete Ward were all in a very heated confab in the corner of the locker room. I knew something was going on, but I thought they were just talking about how they just got their brains beat out. But, somebody who, trusted that I would handle the story correctly, reached out to me, and I was able to get it confirmed. And then I watched the internet blow up, and next thing I knew, I was on CNN with Anderson Cooper. I mean, it was just totally insane. I was, at the center of this vortex, this crazy social media vortex. Social media Twitter was fairly new back in 2014, 2015. But I'll tell you what, those Barstool bros are relentless.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. And Bob Kravitz with us, BobKravitz.com. Do you remember an example or two where you're like, okay, I am the most hated man in Boston, New England, Barstool Sports, and everything else? Anything specific?
Well, I do remember that when I got laid off at Channel 13, David Portnoy, the scumbag who runs Barstool, he did a video dancing on my grave. He did a video, of him celebrating me getting laid off.
Gotcha.
So that gave me a pretty good idea that I was A, not liked, and that B, the aforementioned Portnoy is indeed a scumbag.
Again, he is Bob Kravitz, bobkravitz.com, where you can find his work. Saturday, the 10-year anniversary of Deflategate, the story that Bob broke. Do you remember how the Colts kind of got tipped off, Bob? I was going back and trying to think about it. I remember they played the Patriots earlier in the season. Mike Adams picked off Brady twice, so I guess you would have, as weird as this sounds to say, you had ball evidence then of it. And then obviously you fast forward to, they played Baltimore the round before. Obviously there are connections on the coaching staff there.
Right. That's where I think it started. That's never been completely clarified, but I think that Grigson and the Colts brain trust started becoming, curious after they heard that there may have been some monkeying around with the balls in the Baltimore game. So I think that's what got the whole thing started.
Bob Kravitz with us, bobkravitz.com. Before we get you out of here, Bob, and we appreciate the time, obviously the current team right now is going through some stuff, and some stuff is probably probably a lame way to put it. So, Bob, what did you make of Ballard's press conference on Friday? Did anything sound different? You surprised at all that the whole troop is back again for another season?
Well, I'm surprised that Ballard is back. At the same time, Jim doesn't like to spend money the way we think he does, and Ballard's got 2 years on his contract. No, I wasn't particularly surprised. I mean, the actual press conference, I knew he was going to fall on his sword. I didn't know that he was going to perform ritual seppuku on himself. I mean, my God, he he did more than fall on the sword. He was like me after I do something stupid and I'm explaining myself to my wife, Yeah, yes, I screwed up. I'm a bad person. I'm sorry. It was very self-flagellating, I guess, would be the term. And but look, he's a great communicator, and if Jim will give him the funds to go out and get some free agents, I think he could turn this thing around. But it's going to be tough. They got a lot of holes to fill.
Obviously last year, Bob, we saw Chris Ballard spend a whole lot of money on the Colts' own. So, how do you kind of weigh that? Right. Is it, Jim Irsay gives him money, but Ballard just decides to mostly spend it on his own? Or, you brought up the financial thing a couple times here in regards to Irsay.
Right. No, I mean, clearly they've got to, like you said, get some competition in the building. You look at all the teams that played this past weekend, they all have key free agent additions. And what do the Colts have? Joe Flacco and Raekwon Davis. And that's got to stop here and now. They have got to look outside and, look, it is an expensive proposition, but Jim has got to loosen the purse strings, and Chris has got to be less stubborn than he's been in the past couple of years.
Bob Kravitz with us, Payless Liquors Hotline, bobkravitz.com. Bob, last one for me. Anthony Richardson, when I started here, he was just coming in his rookie year, and I believed in Anthony Richardson. I thought he'd be a pretty good quarterback and had the tools with Shane Steichen to kind of do something fun here. I no longer feel that way. Between health and poor play, tapping out of the game, being benched for a couple games, I'm not saying I'm totally off the Anthony Richardson bandwagon, but I'm nearing that point. Where are you after 2 seasons with AR? The health thing is first and foremost. I think if he can stay healthy,
and that's obviously a key question. I think he can be pretty good. I realize he completed just 47% of his passes, but there's things you watch him. I'd be curious your thoughts. I watch him in the pocket, and I think he shows a ton of poise. I think he navigates the pocket really well. I think he keeps his eyes downfield. I think there are things he does really well. Obviously, he throws the deep ball well. I am not completely off the Anthony Richardson bandwagon, but they got to figure out a way to keep him healthy. And as long as he's a running quarterback, that might be a difficult proposition for them.
He's the most hated man in New England. He is certainly
proud of it.
Yes, very proud of it. Top of the LinkedIn page. Will we get a written piece, Bob, looking back on bobkravitz.com on
yes,
Deflategate?
in fact, later this afternoon, as soon as we hang up, I'm going to get back into it, edit out all the curse words, and try to make something that's readable.
I love it. I love it. Bob, thank you for the time.
All right, man.
That's
Take
Bob
care,
Kravitz
guys.
right there, Payless Liquors hotline.
Oh goodness, to be the most hated man in Boston, right in the middle of all that Brady stuff. Boy, you can't be more the center of the sports earth than that, can you? I mean, think about that going back to 14 and 15. That was the Tom Brady, New England Patriot, Bill Belichick run.
And then, just to add to it, like them winning the Super Bowl in that crazy fashion. That was the Malcolm Butler interception.
Oh yeah.
That just kind of, I feel like, added to
like
all of it.
We don't have that right now. I mean, the Chiefs are not viewed as the Patriots were very much more, and God bless, we know that here in Indianapolis, very much more the evil empire.
Yeah,
that's not the Kansas City Chiefs.
I still think Kansas City, a lot of it is just overall jealousy. Like, I'm
jealous of them.
I'll speak for myself. Like, I don't have this like venom towards Mahomes or venom towards Andy Reid.
No, I don't. I'm with you.
I don't necessarily have that. Now, again, maybe if if you were Buffalo and you've been ousted by them quite often, you might feel differently about it. But still, I don't even know if it's. I mean, Belichick was very, very unlikable. And Brady, I think, became – and Brady, he's unlikable probably because he's so good looking and, has all these, models fawning over him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he got better looking. He got better looking as he went. I mean, some of that was not – some of that was science being used and all sorts of other different things, surgeries and everything else probably. But
science and quarterbacks, we could go down quite the rabbit hole.
The man had it going. Oh, goodness.
I was always jealous he could just do whatever he wanted with his hair and it always looked good. You're like, come on. That's not fair. You already look good
the deflator. I forgot about that.
PSI. Remember just
the
hearing
Wells
that?
report. Oh, Mark.
Man. Ted Wells, there he comes. Look at all the documents he's got.
Like looking back at it.
Makes me sicker than when I saw that guy with the Ohio State shirt on at church.
There is a sense of it's a pretty funny story looking back at it.
It is.
It really is. I should say, I know Colts fans are emotional still about that time, but there is a sense of, there's a part, if you can laugh at something, there's a part of it that 10 years ago, it's probably the most ridiculous story. And Brady got suspended 4 games. And just think of all the other jackassery, as JMV would say, things that have happened in the NFL the last 10 years that guys haven't got 4 games.
Well, didn't they want his cell phone? And he's like, it's broken or something.
He crushed his own cell phone.
Yeah, he didn't want privacy getting
It kind of just got me thinking, like, what else are they doing?
Oh, who knows?
I would say that was probably the big thing for me. It's like, okay, if they're willing to do this, what else are they doing? So, again, 10 years coming up on Saturday, the anniversary of Deflategate. I want to go back to something last night, Andy, in Bloomington, because I stayed with the game. I
did too.
I stayed till the final horn. I was curious how the crowd would react. I was curious what we would see. I thought my screen hadn't updated when I saw Mike Woodson run out the same starting 5 to begin the second half after they had just allowed 60 in the first half. Again, peak Woodson laziness there. Robbie Hummel said a couple times there late in the game with no Eagle, I'm, really looking forward to seeing how Indiana will respond on Friday. That's their next game at Ohio State. Again, 4 of 5 coming up on the road for Indiana. Ohio State lost a close one last night to Wisconsin. And I sat there, and I respect Hummel a lot and think he does a nice job. But I thought to myself, Robbie, weren't you fascinated to see how they would respond tonight?
Right.
after getting their ass kicked in
I
Iowa City.
I thought they would play well
by
last night.
Mediocre Iowa team. Like, this has become the norm for Indiana. We saw it in the Bahamas. We've seen it in the NCAA tournament. We've seen it on various neutral road sites. More often than not only does Indiana get beat, but they tell their fan base at the under 8 time out of the second half, hey, guys, we're getting beat by so much. Go ahead and do something else with your lives. You don't need to stay with us for the final 8 minutes. We're getting smoked here. And so I just thought that was probably maybe where there are a lot of things to be frustrated at last night. Frankly, if I were an IU fan, I'd be upset that Mike Woodson, tells Don Fisher he doesn't have 2 minutes for him post-game either. But that is the response from Saturday in Iowa City. Like, that should be the ultimate wake-up call. That should be another wake-up call, frankly, of your standard, your embarrassment level, et cetera, et cetera. And, Andy, it's not like last night was you're down 8 at half, and then it balloons to 25 in the second half.
No, you were embarrassed from the first minute.
Exactly.
It was 50 to 22 at one point.
And, Illinois is coming off a home loss to USC. They obviously got their best player back. But, okay, they were in a position of, I'm curious how they will respond. And Indiana was in that as well. And instead they said, hey, watch our level of embarrassment. We'll take it to another level. The second worst loss in the history of that building.
Here's the problem. I thought Kravitz did a good job. He said they're screwed. And I don't disagree with that. I don't know what happens here.
I think they're screwed in the short term. I'm still not this one that thinks they're screwed long term.
Well, I'm with you. All it takes.
Can we play out the last two hires here? Okay.
You can flip things quickly in college basketball. You can.
Look, I know Archie was a darling when he got hired, but you really look at that Archie resume. Andy, he had one Elite 8 run. Great, 3-week run. I don't even know what seed they were. If I remember correctly, they weren't a super high seed. It's not like they were, a 3 seed and had some, 28-win season that year and then got on the run. But, people win at Dayton. Dayton is not this dormant program or, people struggle to win there. This is not Kurt Signetti at Elon. And so, when you, again, hindsight is probably 2020 in some of this, but I don't think the Archie Miller, he took the Dayton program from the depths of, the soil and all of a sudden to the mountaintop. And then again, Mike Woodson, take away Mike Woodson playing for Indiana University 40 years ago. He's an under 500 NBA coach who's never been in college basketball.
I know.
Those are bad hires. Those are not, I should say, hires that is deserving of the program, in my opinion. And I get it. We want to fawn over the Hollywood aspect of Mike Woodson being a great player. That's great. But it doesn't matter in terms of being a head coach. And so now, assuming they will do this cycle here coming up here in a few months, what can you go out there and get? Can you get an established winner? Can you get someone that knows what the hell college basketball is all about? Because I don't think either of these last two hires were that.
No, they weren't.
And Tom Crean got you out of the depths.
Yeah, well, we're going to have Tom on tomorrow. Tom Crean, revisionist history might be wrong because I can understand why everyone said, okay, it's time to move on. If you're a guy and you're somewhere a decade or whatever it was, I can understand saying, hey, let's move on. That happened with John Calipari at Kentucky. But boy, the revisionist history on... Boy, I wish we had Tom Crean still. There's been a lot of that the last couple years. And KB, it's not only the wrong hire. They have made bad personality hires. Archie Miller was an AH. He was. Ask anybody around the program the personality that Archie Miller had. And when we have brought up entitled and arrogance, Mike Woodson skipping out on talking to Fish yesterday, all of those things, his personality, his attitude, that doesn't fit what's going on anymore. And I think that's what's bothersome. It's these guys aren't winning games and they're frustrating and their teams, can look lazy, whatever it may be. But their personality, the personality hire to me is wrong. And I agree with you that they might not be screwed in the long term. And who knows what we mean by long term, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But Indiana is in a spot to where the last several years, they have damaged their brand. And make no mistake about it, they have damaged their brand. And then there's this weird thing as well. Whenever I know Jeff Goodman said you go get Scott Drew. Kentucky basketball, I followed, from afar, their coaching search, and they went after. Scott Drew told them no. My point being, in Louisville, I had Mike DeCourcy. We need to have DeCourcy on. I had Mike DeCourcy on every week, and he would always tell me that big-time coaches they usually don't make a move to another school like that. And Indiana's had that issue. They got Archie Miller, and they got Mike Woodson. So everyone wants a new coach. There's a probability that your new coach is someone who is at a lower Power 5 or a mid-major type level right now than you thinking you're going out and getting, Scott Drew. Let's use him, for instance. Chris Beard, we'll get to this point probably in the season to where we break down what happened with Chris Beard. Is he a terrible human? Does he deserve a shot? At this point, Indiana fans might sell their soul for a couple more wins.
Hell, bring back Sampson.
Boy, Calvin Sampson's went on to have a nice career at Houston. But I am almost at loss for words. We are going to, and this is the biggest problem with this, I think fans, to a certain extent, like when we come on here and we crush like the Colts. It got to that point to guys, get on the air. People tagging us on Twitter and give Chris Ballard the business. And I think there's a sense of that with Indiana. Now, I don't know, and this is not good for radio, what else can you say? I mean, we both have got on here and we have expressed what we think Mike Woodson is doing or not doing. We've expressed frustration on Ballo and other players on the team that have been lazy. I mean, I also would like Trey Galloway to be able to make a free throw at any point in his career at Indiana, just not to pick on Ballo. But I don't know what else to say other than it is clear it's not working out. But it's not clear if it's going to be taken care of at the end of the year. And then yesterday you mentioned you don't think money is going to be an issue. And I would agree with you, but I'm just throwing it out there that after 2013, they gave him an extension. They redid his deal, which moved his buyout instead of going down at the end of this year. His buyout doesn't start to go down until the end of March next year in 2026. I know it's a few $1 million. You're a big-time program. You're in the Big Ten. You got all the cash. But someone's going to also have to write the check, have to write the Tom Allen check and his staff and everybody else. So they are right now they are in a terrible spot, and no one has got less return on investment. There's two teams this year, Indiana basketball and Arkansas basketball.
Well, and I would argue Indiana's extends much, much longer than that. I would argue it extends probably close to a decade. I'll just add two things because I know we're up against it. Again, arrogance and lazy. The arrogance for Michael Woodson is seen in roster construction, it's seen in coaching staff construction, and it's seen in, I would say, a refusal to admit that, and that, boy, last night was another perfect example of it. The three-point line matters a whole lot. And then laziness. Laziness in throwing out the same starting five to start the second half last night. Laziness in the recruitment of 5 stars in your own backyard.
Yep. I mean, you're right. We should have made a bigger deal on the recruiting probably 3 months ago.
Well,
but we're in the middle of football.
It's not just losing them. It's listening to the reasons why. Dan Hurley from Storrs, Connecticut, seen Braylon Mullins in person more than Mike Woodson from Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah, Mike Woodson should have been
Micah
camped outside
Shrewsbury
his
living,
house.
Pretty much with Jalen Harrelson. I mean, it's just, yeah, you can't get outworked like that. All right, let's hit a morning check down.
All right, quickly, let me give you one from Woodson last night. 94-69, that's your final. Ballo got thrown out of the game, the pushy match. He comes out of nowhere like Stone Cold Steve Austin. There you go, Mark. There's a wrestling reference. Here's Woodson after the game. He was asked, hey, are you going to do anything with Ballo?
Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot I can do, until I go back and review it, and I'm sure the commissioner and everybody will take a look at what happened and make a decision on what they plan on doing. I just hope Ballo's with us our next game as we travel over to Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio State, that's coming up on Friday. I think that's 8 o'clock on Fox.
Last night, Gainbridge Fieldhouse Pacers win streak comes to an end, 127-117. About what you would expect without Tyrese Halliburton. Defensively, I think you should expect a little better, but still, Cleveland responded how you would think the number one team in the East would do. They pull away there late. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, very good. Benedict Mathurin gets tossed, deservedly so. Late in that game, he certainly crossed the line, and he did have a, call it slight, call it whatever. He had a bump of that woman official, Natalie, I forget her last name, And so what will that lead to? Could we see Mathurin suspended for tomorrow night? We'll await that and the update on Tyrese Halliburton again at Detroit tomorrow. Home against Philly on Saturday, off to Paris after that. Midway point of the season for the Pacers, 22-19. So they certainly have recovered very nicely.
Purdue on the road tonight against Washington. You can catch. That's going to be a late game for everybody. 9:30 on the Big Ten Network. Butler in action tonight. Actually favored by 6.5 against Seton Hall. 7 o'clock, Fox Sports 1. You got anything else?
We had some Colts news that broke a little earlier in the show. We'll share that on the other side, and a defensive coordinator name that I like.
Well, plus we have Dane Brugler just put his mock draft out on the Athletics, so he has a couple names for the Colts. We'll do it next. Appreciate you hanging out. It's Wednesday. We got you to 10 o'clock on the Fan.
Reminder tomorrow, Tom Crean at 9. Joe Wright's going to join us. coming up tomorrow as well. So we'll talk a variety of things on the show. Announced earlier, we rarely get breaking news during the show, but right at 8 o'clock this morning, the Colts announced they will have a home game in Berlin next year. This is actually the first NFL game to be played in Berlin. And, of course, that stadium, that Olympic stadium there, quite iconic, going back to Jesse Owens in the 36 Olympics, and hosted a World Cup final back in 2006. So it remains to be seen who the opponent will be, Andy. But, again, we know this will be a Colts home game. First time ever it will be one of their home games going international. Remains to be seen how this impacts season ticket members and those packages. But, again, the NFL went to 17 games a few years ago. The Colts have a 9th home game this season. So it could be one of their divisional games. Other opponents, Cardinals, 49ers, Raiders, Broncos, Dolphins, and Falcons.
So Mark thinks it's going to be the Cardinals. I guess Raiders you could throw in there too.
I went with Falcons.
We always think it's going to be a bad team. You think it's going to be Michael Penix Jr.
Actually, the Raiders make some sense if you want to get one of those quarterbacks.
I don't think it'll be any of the division games. So I think, you're looking at, I feel like they're going to want to do an AFC-NFC matchup, and I don't know, the Cardinals aren't very good, but it just kind of sticks out that would be maybe the one that they pick.
We have Shane Steichen versus Gannon. How about that? There
you think
go.
The Colts should just sacrifice week 1 and say, can you go play that over in Berlin? Put it at 3 a.m. in the morning.
That's such a great point. Just get it out of the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't get at Jacksonville.
Right.
I mean, this is your own home game, so you can't do that.
I got thinking, I need to go back when the games were played this year. Doesn't it mean you're going to get a bye maybe more in the middle of the season instead of the back?
The Colts went. It was post-Frankfurt, right, for their bye?
Right.
And I want to say that was kind of, Mark, you can double-check this. I want to say that date was kind of like mid-November. I want to say like November 10th-ish. So,
maybe not
it kind of depends. Obviously, you guys have brought it up on the show. Germany is a much further trip than even England. So, in getting back to, or, playing in Mexico City, for example. Like next year, I think the international games are London and Madrid. Well, those are shorter flights than Berlin. So, some teams have adopted with the, if we're going to play over there early in the season, we still don't want the bye week to be right after that.
It was week 10. It was November 12th. So week 11 was their bye week.
Got it.
And obviously, that's different than this past season.
Certainly much earlier than this past year. Again, next year's road slate, or I should say travel slate, because this is a home game, is just, it's probably one of the bigger travel slates the Colts have ever had. They'll go to L.A. twice. They'll go to Seattle, Arrowhead, and then Berlin.
That's pretty good. Got to get those miles in, Kevin Bowen. Got to get those miles. Dane Brugler, our good friend from The Athletic, who we had him on, 2 weeks ago? Something like that. He's got a name for us in the first round who the Colts will take at number 14 overall. Now, have you looked at this mock draft?
I have not, no. A name people would like?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is
name?
This is the name. He has at 14, Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end. We'll dive into him a little bit more tomorrow. But he's got him. I kind of laughed. We were laughing about this before we came on the air this morning, that I'm sold that Ballard's going to take an offensive lineman. Who would go at 13 to the Miami Dolphins? A name that I think people need to be familiar with just in case. Will Campbell from LSU. Have you followed his story at all?
I haven't, no.
Will Campbell is seen as kind of a guy that you can put him in there, guard, tackle, and he can play day one. It's a day one starter. So he would go 13. Tyler Warren would go 14. I bring it up because if you gave me two names early on in the process, 3-4 months away from the NFL draft, those would be the two names.
I was wildly impressed with Tyler Warren the other night. What Penn State does with him, I think, is also very attractive. Like, Penn State has given you a blueprint. So many times it's like, wait, the college team used him like that? And it's looked at, not in a positive light. I would disagree. I thought Warren and how they utilized him was very impressive. The versatility is eye-popping. Again, I am a Warren fan, but I will say this, and Andy, I don't know if this is a history project anyone wants to do. You look at the history of first-round tight ends.
I know.
And not necessarily individual success, because Brock Bowers obviously had a really nice rookie year. But you look at their team success over the last 10 to 15 years, these tight ends are not coming in and really impacting you in a positive manner win-loss-wise.
Laporta was in the second round, and he had a good first year in this past year. He was okay.
Kyle Pitts, Eric Ebron, O.J. Howard, Jermaine Gresham.
I know.
Tyler, I know injuries, for Eifert. But when you look at these tight ends, it's not, and again, is that a position of just vital importance. Now, a counter to that would be I don't think Warren's just a tight end. I think he's just an offensive weapon. So I'm a little torn on it. We'll continue to play this out here over the next couple of months. Would he get to 14?
See, I don't
in
think
a draft that is, I think, starving for offensive talent that high?
I don't think he gets to 14. I would be surprised if he did. And you mentioned it's lacking offensive talent. For instance, last year we had the run of quarterbacks, and then we had the run on wide receivers.
Latu was the first defender.
Yeah, I know, and it was 15, and that still is unbelievable. We don't have that this year. You have a Travis Hunter, who could, again, be a corner or a wide receiver. If I'm drafting Travis Hunter, I'm playing him at corner, and I'll have some gadget plays at wide receiver. That's just me. The McMillan kid, that's because I can't say his first name, the wide receiver from Arizona, and then the two quarterbacks, and that might be it if you don't count offensive lineman. Luther Burden, who is a wide receiver from Missouri. It's a name that we talked about. Somebody had them mocked to take him last week. That's why we mentioned it, but I'm not sold Tyler Warren is there at 14, and I think somebody like Brock Bowers, I don't know, helped elevate maybe. If you think a tight end is special, hey, look, they can be special. Perhaps maybe Tyler Warren gets helped out by that. But if you think you're going to sit there at 14, and that gets into if you're going to trade, are you going to use a first-round draft pick and draft capital to trade for a tight end? You tell me. That doesn't sound like something that a lot of NFL people and Chris Ballard would do, but it is such a position of need.
We'll get.
By the way, can I just one other thing?
Yeah.
The free agents, tight end wise, it's not a great crop. Like Jonnu Smith, who had a great season for the Miami Dolphins, could he be had? Like I'm just asking. I don't know. Could he be had? Colby Parkinson, who
Yeah, again,
the Rams
last year, I
don't know.
Your Final Four teams all had very good tight ends. I don't think any of them were first-round picks. So again, that's just the counter, I think, to some of the difficulty in weighing that position. We mentioned it earlier in the show. Wink Martindale reportedly will interview with the Colts here coming up today. Atlanta, I believe, yesterday for Martindale. We shared our thoughts earlier. I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of the overall approach being a 180 from Gus Bradley more than anything, but I also think Martindale's edginess, the former truck driver in him, the Bruce Arians vibes in him.
Was he a former truck driver?
It's an acquired taste, but I think it's a taste that building needs, frankly.
I think he and Greg Rakestraw can have some conversations because Rakestraw's dad was a former truck driver.
I was about to say, maybe Wink can just sit in the back seat and go to a Notre Dame basketball game.
Hell yeah, look at that trio.
Point.
Wink doesn't strike me as a backseat dude.
No,
I think,
he's shoving Kevin to the back.
I think I might be in the trunk.
He's the guy
we would have to auction off it. Somehow went, Rake drive, Wink shotgun, me behind Rake. We'd have to auction off the seat behind Wink.
That'd be fantastic. He has the seat all the way back. I can see Wink having the seat all the way back.
1,000%.
I can see him having combos, coffee, and dipping all at the same time.
Yes.
And of course, he would dip into a Diet Mountain Dew bottle.
Well, he might swallow the dip.
He just might go ahead and do that. I gave you some stats earlier. In 2024, this past season, the Colts blitzed, and it's not all about blitzing, but the Colts blitzed 17% of the time. That was even less in 2023 and 22. They were on 15% in those years. So you're looking at Wink Martindale 2 years ago with the Giants. He blitzed 45% of the time. And one of the years in Baltimore, he was a little bit over 50% of the time. And if there's a guy, we mentioned this in the 7 o'clock hour, if there's a guy who is quite literally the most opposite person, personality and scheme-wise on the football side than Gus Bradley, it's Wink Martindale.
Remember the Titans, Coach Yost, what does he say? You blitz all night?
Oh, I haven't seen that movie in 15 years.
You don't give them an inch.
I think that
15
seems
years.
to be branded to Wink Martindale.
Yeah.
Just like that play like a champion tattoo on that lady that I met yesterday.
Boy, I have so many questions about that.
I do too. Kind of want to talk about
Very
that.
nice lady.
Well, good. I'm glad everything was.
Yeah.
And the smoothie was good. Smoothie was all good.
Smoothie
all right.
went down well for Rosie.
Well, good.
Go Irish. Come on.
All right, 239-1070 pop quiz. It's a Wednesday. Good Jimmy did a pretty good job.
Yeah, valiant
yesterday.
effort. I think it's a doable pop quiz, by the way.
Okay, I haven't looked at it yet. So 317-239-1070 pop quiz coming up next.
Wow, I must say, I haven't laughed audibly out loud at a lot of pop quiz questions. Sometimes I question, frankly, Scotty, and some of just the middle fingers he throws up at our audience. I laughed out loud when I read number 1.
That's a good one, yeah.
Very fitting from
It's a
Scotty.
good one. It's the first time since I've been here that we've had this question.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree on my end as well. Mark, what am I seeing here on this photo that you've tweeted out?
That was not me. That was a listener that sent that to me in my DMs. He slid into my DMs and said, "Hey, I made something for you."
Oh
And
boy.
he threw that at me. I was like, "Well, I should tweet it out." He said it took him longer than the 90 seconds it took me to do mine. So I figured,
Care to
let it-
describe for our audience that maybe missed the wake-up call photo here
Well,
on
shout
Twitter?
out to Alex for sliding into my DMs and sending me a picture of Kevin Bowen with an ET body in a green Speedo, and in the background is the Monument Circle monument. I was like, maybe a sight to see a week from now.
Those construction workers, because they're always doing construction on the circle, they're going to think, what the hell's going on?
Do you think that'll be the next Visit Indy picture that they put up in the airport?
Yeah.
Maybe the Google Maps guy will be going through.
That would be
You know
fantastic.
how they have the big camera, the Google Maps, and some people always do hijinks whenever they go by their home?
We need listeners like out on the circle the day you do that, so we can like root
Well,
you
we gotta
on.
have Notre Dame win the game. Can we start
No,
there?
I've already
They got to win the national title
I've
first.
already stamped it that win or lose, we're doing this.
Ugh.
It's either going to be a run of
Be so
celebration or a walk of shame.
It's going to be so cold.
I'm a little nervous about the sizing.
It's
I hope it's
now.
Can you
more tight than
imagine if
loose.
it's today? Boy,
It's going to be
the
light.
thing the
it's gonna
Speedo
be light
covers up
today.
might be inside my belly button if it's like today.
It's going to be a little bit like today. I mean, listen, KB, it's going to be under 20 degrees when you go out there.
Yeah.
Maybe the sun helps. Maybe a little bit. It's 8 o'clock. The sun might be out. You'll be warmed up. Maybe it's 17 degrees instead of 7 degrees.
We're going to need to also get some technology going here. I mean, do I like run with my AirPods in and I'm calling you? Do we want audio on air? I mean, how are we going to?
Well, I feel like our digital guy needs to be out there. Somebody needs to be out there recording so we can share the visual medium
is
of
like
this whole thing.
Mark in studio and Andy's on the circle, for like a, post finish line interview.
Mhm.
Well,
Am I sprinting? Is this a jog?
No, I think it's a light jog.
I think you have to have decent shoes too, because God forbid there's ice out there and you take a spill.
Boy, I didn't even think about that.
The ice is terrible right now. It's worse driving on some roads now than it was last week with all the snow. Yeah, I think.
Picturing Kevin slipping, falling, and then his Speedo rips, and then he's holding up the Speedo as he's making the lap.
Well, no.
Speedo ripping is just.
And I have to help him up. Who's going to be there? It's going to be me and whoever.
Well, the
from
construction
digital.
workers.
I would say this. I think we probably could pull this off. Is Mark is back in studio? You're on the phone. I take a Comrex outside,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
and I have a Comrex outside, and and I'm there, and I think that to me that would be the first play, and then if we need a backup plan, we can go to plan B. I got no problem with that.
I don't know if I agree with the whole win or lose. Speedo has to be done.
Well,
I mean,
I'm gonna leave that between you guys. We've done a lot of work on this.
Yeah.
That if
Mark sounds like quite the fan here.
Well, I feel like we should pay this off at some point, regardless. We've pumped it up for like 10 days now.
yeah,
Feel like
we
even
have.
if you win, you're happy to do it, and if you lose, you're less happy to do it. But at least you're in a Speedo walking around the circle.
317-239-1070. Pop quiz commencing now. Again, I audibly laughed out loud when I saw question number 1. Andy Sweeney at number 1 through 8.
Let's go caller number 3 today, Mark. Caller number 3.
All right, that goes to Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, Brian. How are you?
Good.
Brian, you seem like a really nice individual. You got a favorite team that you root for endlessly?
Thank you. Unfortunately, the Colts.
Okay. Were you a fan of Run It Back from Jim Irsay?
Absolutely not.
Were you thinking he
Absolutely not.
was going to say yes to that one?
Yeah, I mean, there was 5% of them. He seems like such a nice guy. I don't know. Maybe.
You seem positive and uplifting on this Wednesday.
I'd say Pollard must go.
Brian,
I think we still need to give Richardson a shot. He's still unbelievably young.
Were you there week 18?
No, I was not.
Got it. All right, Brian, good luck on the pop quiz today. Thank you for calling 5 for 5. Jiffy Lube oil change coming your way.
All right, Brian, let's get a winner today. Question number 1. Which team was whistled for more technical fouls last night? The Pacers or the Hoosiers?
I'm going Pacers.
It's a good start.
Do you respect the Ballo effort at the end?
It's
The what?
it's the fastest he's moved all season.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, no, I really don't. No, he was kind of blindsided.
So
He
you
was
aren't
out
one
of
of
the
you
picture.
standing up for Luke Goody?
Oh, I don't think he was. I don't think he cares about Luke Goody. No. I
No.
just wanted to be in the action.
Brian, number 2 here. Ole Miss went to Tuscaloosa last night in basketball and knocked off 4th-ranked Alabama. Name the last AP top 5 team that Ole Miss beat on the road. Kentucky, Mississippi State, Texas, or it's the first time it's ever happened?
I'm going first time it's ever happened.
Brian listens to the show.
It's a big weekend, or that's a big win, I should say. Question number 3, Notre Dame and Ohio State square off in the national championship game on
Scotty, why the
Monday.
hell do we need it? We don't need this question.
You know what's coming. The Buckeyes lead the all-time series with the Irish 5-2, with Notre Dame's 2 wins coming in the 1930s.
Wow.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
The Irish and Buckeyes have met in 2 bowl games. In fact, they've met twice in the same bowl game. Name that bowl. The Sugar Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, or the Sun Bowl?
We'll go Fiesta.
Well, I know that. They rain man cold, but they're.
There'll be people in the circle when they watch me running around with the Speedo. That was Brady Quinn's sister, right? Rocking the AJ Hawk brother jersey,
Oh,
right?
I forgot about that.
Did they get married?
I thought they did for
Did they?
some reason. Yeah.
Pretty sure they did, yeah.
Number 4 here. Are we 3 for 3 so far?
We are.
NFL divisional playoffs get underway Saturday afternoon. Brian, 2-time defending champ. That would be the Chiefs, of course, hosting the Texans. Chiefs are looking for their 8th straight win in a playoff game, which would be the 3rd longest win streak in postseason history. Which team holds the NFL record for most playoff wins in a row? Patriots, Dolphins, Packers, 49ers.
I hate to say it, but I'm going to go Patriots.
Ooh.
This is one of the darkest days in Boston sports history.
Brian seems nice. Brian seems smart.
I hope he wins. All right, question number 5. 58 years ago today, Super Bowl I took place between the Packers and the Chiefs. Where was Super Bowl I played? The Orange Bowl in Miami, Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum there in L.A., or the Rose Bowl in Pasadena?
I'm going Nolans.
You know what? I respect the hell. I thought when, you were reading that question, Andy, you kind of gave an opportunity to potentially Google the fact that he did not do that. Brian also stands for integrity.
He does. Oh, Brian, 4 out of 5. You broke our hearts. The right answer, L.A., the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Oh.
Got the first 4 right. Scotty, technically, did Mathern get 3 technicals last night?
Yeah, he got called for 3, but technically it's just 2, if that makes sense. I believe, yeah.
Because he got the chin up 1, and then he got the 2 there late for going after the woman official. And then
I think she did that to make sure he was thrown out of the game, maybe forgetting that he had already had one back in, what was that, the first quarter, whatever it was.
I'm not a big guy that gripes on officials. I think our audience knows that. I thought last night's officiating was kind of poor in that Pacer game. And I thought Cleveland got a bad whistle at times. I thought Indiana probably got a worse one, but
I'm a little bit surprised that Carlisle wasn't a little bit more demonstrative. He was a couple games ago. He almost got tossed. Well, I need to look it up. What game was it? It was like 2 or 3 games ago. He was in the face of an official, and I guess he didn't say the magic word or words that gets you tossed from a game, but he wasn't. He wasn't nearly in their face as much as I thought he would be. There was also, the one that bothered me, we didn't talk about it, was the Nemhard little elbow that he gave in the first quarter to Jared Allen. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Because I thought that was one of those crowds last night where, like, Pacer fans are uber happy with how their team's playing. Like, that was kind of lively regular season.
Oh, sure it was.
Atmosphere there. Stan Van Gundy, Brian Anderson on the call again for TNT. So, basketball-wise tonight, again, Purdue fans, boy, get your nap in. 9:30. That will be Purdue and Washington. So, Purdue will have their first Western trip. Man, I was thinking about this. When these teams do the Western trip, I know people laugh at it. So, you miss 4 days of school? Is that right? I mean, Purdue players probably flew out when? Yesterday morning?
So, yesterday.
Yesterday at some point.
Yeah, at some point. Even, middle of the day, lunchtime, whatever it was. So maybe they got some class in early in the... I can't believe we're talking about this. Maybe Braden Smith went to a class at 8:30, I guess.
But, like, for, UCLA or USC or Washington or Oregon, like, this is like an every other week ordeal for them.
It is.
It's just, like, a lot. I mean again, I'm not going to play the, student-athlete card here. But it's just a lot of travel.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm looking at their schedule right now.
I mean, more than anything, it's just a lot of travel.
Yeah, they don't group things together too much. So they play Purdue at home, and then they go to at Oregon, which isn't far. Then they come back home, so that's okay.
Yeah, Purdue is at Oregon Saturday, by the way.
At Minnesota, and then back home for Nebraska. So it's not like they're coupling these games together to where they play 2 or 3 games, like kind of on the road at a time. I don't know. There's part of me that's like, yeah, you get on a plane, it's just a plane ride. But it does. I mean, if you went right now and got on a plane and flew for 4 hours, I don't want to say it ruins your day, but, it's not easy on the body to be traveling that much.
So Purdue tonight, again, at Washington, 9:30, and then again, they got Oregon on Saturday. IU's double dip this year is USC, UCLA later in the year.
What you got popping the rest of the day? Anything?
Well,
you getting another smoothie?
Hoping to run into more Notre Dame random fans that have tattoos on them.
Oh, Mark, these Notre Dame fans are going to come out of the woodwork if they win the national title.
Know it. You know it.
As opposed to the Ohio State fans?
Well, you're right.
Come on. I mean, these are equally hateable fan bases. Let's be honest.
That's true. The thing I will say is, will KB be bothered by some of the people that come out of the woodwork? Because that happens occasionally. Like the guy that who is now suddenly a big Notre Dame fan when you've been carrying this torch.
I got the ego of Mike Woodson when it comes to Notre Dame, baby. I'm in my own little bubble.
You're in your own little bubble.
I'm in my own little bubble, man.
Purdue tonight, 9:30. That's going to be a late one on the Big Ten Network. They're favored by a touchdown tonight. So if you want to get a bet in, I did see Evan Mignai, is that how you say his name, has Braden Smith 100% as a first-team All-American. So
he's been pretty darn good this year.
He's been really good. Jake and Jimmy coming up at noon. JMV coming up at 3 o'clock. Check out the podcast center, 1075thefan.com. We're back at it tomorrow, 7 a.m. Have a good afternoon.